Chapter 331. Tion naturally would not rashly rush into the Southern Barbarian. Now he was not clear about the situation in the Southern Barbarian, who knew how many immortal cultivators there were inside. Although he was anxious and eager to return to the Southern Barbarian, he was very confident that the formation diagram still existed and had not been broken. If it was not for the fact that the distance was too far, and the formation diagram had not been completely refined due to the lack of time, he could only leave a trace of primordial spirit in the diagram. As long as his mind moved, he could control the formation diagram with his mind. The power of the formation diagram would be completely activated. Unfortunately, the Southern Barbarian was too far away. His mind could only roughly sense the situation of the formation diagram. He knew that the formation diagram had not been broken, but to control it, unless he was already very close to the Southern Barbarian. Otherwise, it was not an ordinary difficulty. Chun-Shi, nothing must happen to you otherwise. Tian's eyes burst with a trace of light, and he secretly said in his heart, I will slaughter hundreds of immortal cultivation sects and bury them with you. Taking a deep breath, he did not leave. He stood on the ship, slowly closed his eyes, immersed his mind in his body, and operated the Huangji Shocking World Book. For a time, in the Demon Mansion, the dark third-grade Black Lotus was constantly rotating at a constant speed. Every time it rotated, it swallowed up the power of desire and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that poured into the demon refining cauldron. If the demon refining cauldron was a lake, then the Black Lotus was growing on the surface of the water, constantly absorbing a steady stream of nutrients to strengthen itself. And there was a light golden Huangji, true force, spurting out of the Black Lotus, pouring out of the Demon Mansion. In the three open demon veins in the body, it was constantly in a mysterious way, sometimes fast and sometimes slow, with a mysterious rhythm. When it was constantly moving, it was also stimulating the demon veins at the same time. If one looked carefully, they would find that these places that were constantly being stimulated by the Huangji true force had an important connection with the surrounding flesh and blood. Every time it beat, it had the same effect on the surrounding flesh and blood. The flesh and blood were constantly being tempered, and there was a trace of Huangji true force in it, making the demon body stronger. If one looked closely, they would discover that on these strange nodes, after being stimulated by the Emperor's true force time and time again, there were small granulation sprouts on the demon veins that seemed to have a life of their own. They were trying their best to extend into the surrounding flesh and blood. For example, the main demon meridian connected to the heart had numerous thin branches that spread out like a net, covering the surrounding flesh and blood. The branches of the main demon meridians were connected to each other to form various acupuncture points, which are called demon acupoints. That was what made the Shocking Book of the King so special. Even if other demons walked the path of ancient demons, it was impossible for them to create a branch of the demon pulse. At least, before they became a demon saint, they would not be able to do it. But the Shocking Book of the King had done it. What did it mean for the demon pulse to have more branches? It meant that when the Emperor's true force was operating, it would be able to penetrate more demon pulses and cover a large area of flesh and blood. This kind of operation would allow the body to continuously absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The speed of the power of desire would increase by several times or even dozens of times. It would also be able to better strengthen the body. It would allow the body to better control every bit of power. It would be able to display a strength that was several times stronger. However, only the first demon meridian had been completely controlled. Of the 3 demon meridians that could be operated, only this one had given birth to small branches. It could be foreseen that as long as all 13 demon meridians were under his control, his entire body would be covered by the branches of the demon meridians. As long as he willed it, a powerful force would instantly appear in any part of his body. At that time, how powerful would he be? When Tian closed his eyes and operated the cultivation method, a strange sign appeared outside his body. A large amount of extremely evil and frightening dark gas was unceasingly pouring in from all directions. It was not affected by the protective shield of the floating cloud boat in the slightest. All of it was pouring into his body through the countless pores all over his body. It had already been swallowed by the 3 demon meridians that were like vacuum cleaners. There was also a huge amount of multicolored spiritual energy forming a whirlpool in his body. It was also pouring into his body. Ever since the power of desire and demon energy had been promoted by the power of fortune, they had all fused together and transformed into the current emperor's true force. Regardless of whether it was absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth or the power of desire, the emperor's true force could be strengthened. The speed of absorption was something that even the heaven-ranked cultivation method could not compare to. It was almost 10 times stronger. When Medusa was driving the floating cloud boat, it was naturally impossible for her to not be aware of the strange situation around her. Her limpid eyes were sizing up D. Shirtian's body. She didn't know why, but she unexpectedly didn't dare to carefully look at the expression on D. Shirtian's face. It was as if there was a kind of invisible power that was involuntarily branding her heart with an irresistible thought. It was as if she was looking at a supreme emperor. This kind of feeling gave her an extremely peculiar feeling. Such a tyrannical aura. I don't know what kind of opportunity he had in the secret territory. The aura that is leaking out from his body is actually so powerful that it can actually affect my mind and give rise to the thought of surrendering to him. Medusa once again looked at the wisps of dark gas that were emerging from the void. A trace of peculiarity unceasingly appeared between her brows. What exactly is he cultivating? Elder sister, she once said that even in ancient times, no one was able to directly absorb this frightening power of desire. Even those spell masters who were most proficient in using the power of desire didn't dare to say that they could directly absorb it. They could only transform the power of desire into a curse brand and form a curse power within their body. He is unexpectedly able to wantonly absorb it without being affected. She wasn't the only one who didn't understand the matter of Deshirtion being able to absorb the power of desire. As long as one knew about it, they would feel that it was very absurd. However, the facts were right in front of them, and they had no choice but to believe it. Medusa's heart flashed with these thoughts, but she still couldn't figure it out. After a long while, she could only slightly shake her head and temporarily suppress this matter at the bottom of her heart. Then, she began to drive the floating cloud boat forward with all her strength. Time gradually passed in this silence. The sun was setting in the west. Unknowingly, the 2 suns had already quietly left before their eyes. During these 2 days, Deshirtion and Medusa took turns to drive the floating cloud boat. They took turns to rest. The floating cloud boat was always at its fastest speed. It streaked across the void like a meteor. However, the purple gold continent was really too big. It was so big that the Earth of his previous life seemed like an ant in comparison. To put it bluntly, the Misty Wave Lake was as big as half of the Earth. After these 2 days of flying at full speed, they had already arrived at a mountain peak less than 1,000 miles away from the southern wilderness by the night of the 2nd day. The mountain peak didn't have a name, but it towered into the sky. The clouds and mist gathered and scattered at the peak and floated indeterminately. It seemed like an illusion. Standing on a cloud peak and overlooking the mountain peak, a kind of feeling naturally emerged in one's heart. It was as if one had climbed to the top of the mountain and looked down at the other mountains. A spirit boat was anchored on the mountain peak. In the boat, Deshirtion and Medusa didn't speak. They just silently closed their eyes and absorbed the spiritual energy between heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and the moon. They both knew that if they wanted to, they could arrive at the southern wilderness at any time. However, once they arrived at the southern wilderness, what would appear in front of them would be an earth-shattering battle. Naturally, they wouldn't waste any time. They focused all their attention on recovering their cultivation. During this period of time, they had to push their state to the peak in one fell swoop. At that time, the combat power they could exert would reach their peak. Although they were cultivating in silence, When Di Tian was cultivating in silence, his mind fiercely escaped from the connection between heaven and earth and instantly probed over. I like to see what kind of people are besieging my myriad demon valley. Di Tian let out a cold snort in his heart. A trace of terrifying pressure inexplicably appeared in his body, but it disappeared in an instant. When he arrived here, the connection between him and the formation suddenly became close, and a feeling of complete control emerged in his heart. From the position in front of him, he could easily control the operation of the formation. This time, it could be said that he was truly enraged. While he was cultivating in silence, he directly separated a trace of his mind and escaped directly to the formation. Boom, boom, boom. Relying on the connection between him and the formation, this kind of conversion was completed almost instantly, and his mind directly entered the formation. Before he could take a closer look at the surrounding scene, the terrifying pressure on his body and a series of fierce roars sounded in the surroundings. Di Tian let out a cold snort, but strangely, what came out was a strange sound of ga that made people's hearts feel cold. At this time, he suddenly turned into a white bone emperor that was thousands of feet tall. His body was covered with armor formed by white bones, and in his hand, there was a huge tiger soul saber. However, this tiger soul was not the one in Di Tian's original hand at all. It was just a saber formed by white bones with the appearance of a tiger soul. Even so, it was still fierce and overbearing. White flames covered the terrifying saber that was thousands of feet long. Above his head, there was a strange pagoda that was also thousands of feet tall. The entire body of the pagoda seemed to be made of gold, and there were countless mysterious cloud seals on it. Golden light kept flowing, mixed with the power of thunder, and pressed down. However, under the pagoda, a huge bone hand was supporting the pagoda with an indomitable posture, and it didn't give in at all. It was like a pillar of heaven, and its entire body exuded a strong aura. Di Tian had directly replaced the consciousness of the White Bone Emperor and controlled this extremely powerful immortal body in one fell swoop. This was not strange. There were 8 pieces of the white bone soul-devouring diagram, and each piece had a bone mountain. There were a total of 8 mountains, and the center was originally not there. It was formed by the combination of the formation diagrams. The Central Emperor was actually the key to refining the formation diagram. Once it was refined, it would automatically give birth to this emperor. Inside the emperor's body, there was the primordial spirit imprint of the refiner. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 332. It could be said that the existence of the White Bone Emperor represented Di Tian's will. It was his incarnation in the formation map. As long as he was willing, he could easily incarnate into the White Bone Emperor at any time and control everything in the formation map, causing the formation map to exert an unparalleled supreme power. If it were not for the fact that his primordial spirit had not been completely imprinted into the Emperor's body, he could have directly controlled the formation map when he was in the mist. Moreover, the White Bone Emperor was Di Tian's incarnation. It was the imprint in the formation map. As long as the Emperor was not destroyed, the formation map would not be occupied by anyone. Thinking about how powerful the White Bone Emperor was, it definitely had the unparalleled power of the peak of the combination realm. In addition, the formation map would increase its own power. Even tribulation might not be able to do anything to it. He also had an immortal body. The fire seed in his mind would not be extinguished and could be reborn at any time. As long as the formation map was not broken, he was supreme here. Anyone who entered would be suppressed. As soon as Di Tian took control of the White Bone Emperor's body, he naturally felt the enormous power flowing in this body. Standing on a white bone mountain, the power under his feet continuously entered his body. He did not have to worry about the problem of his power being exhausted. Ga. Those who invade my myriad demon valley will be killed no matter how far away they are. In Di Shi Tian's eyes, the huge lantern-like flames flickered coldly. He raised his head and looked at the pagoda in his hand. He suddenly let out a loud roar. A terrifying force fiercely spewed out from his left hand, which was holding the pagoda, and the pagoda was blown away on the spot. Kill! The saber in his hand, which was exactly the same as Tiger's soul, instantly burst out with scorching white bone flames. The saber was quickly raised, driving the surrounding space. A terrifying scene of space being destroyed appeared on the spot. Amidst countless explosions, the saber unceremoniously slashed down at the pagoda. This slash seemed to be able to split the world. Under the saber, countless grayish-white saber chi swept across the world. The space under the saber shattered, as if it was going to cut the void open. In the saber, there was a domineering emperor's chi and the will of an emperor. In the world, all the land belonged to the emperor, and all the people who fell to the ground were the emperor's subjects. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will die. Those who betray me will be killed without mercy. Bang! Di Shi Tian swung his blade with the wrath of an emperor, causing the space under the blade to tremble. This was a blade that was above everything else. It was the ultimate embodiment of Di Shi Tian's aura of supremacy. How domineering! The pagoda had already been blasted out. When the saber landed on the pagoda, a mournful cry came from the pagoda. The golden light that appeared on the surface instantly burst forth with an unprecedentedly strong light, but it immediately retracted, and the light became incomparably dim. Poof! The pagoda had suffered such a heavy blow in the blink of an eye. From the moment Di Shi Tian began his attack to the moment his saber landed on the pagoda, only a short 2 to 3 seconds had passed. No one had expected such a huge change to occur. Outside the formation was a middle-aged man in a black robe. His face was dignified, and he was riding a strange bird with 9 heads. Judging from his aura, there was a kind of arrogance, as if he was above thousands of people and had supreme power in his hands. It made people not dare to look at him easily. But at this moment, his body strangely seemed to have been devoured by lightning, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His face immediately turned from red to pale, and his eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the colossal white bone emperor in the formation. He muttered to himself, "How is this possible? This white bone emperor has never taken the initiative to attack. How can it suddenly erupt with such terrifying combat strength? Also, just now it opened its mouth to speak." His eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. All along, the white bone emperor had been passive and had never taken the initiative to attack. But even so, it had already displayed incomparably powerful strength. Therefore, it was just right to use this demon subduing pagoda to restrain it. He didn't expect such a shocking change to happen at all. Gaga. Di Shi Tian slashed the pagoda away with his saber and turned his head to look around. He saw that a large number of the skeleton army in the formation had almost been wiped out, and only a few were still resisting. There were thousands of elite immortal cultivators in the formation, and the weakest was at the foundation establishment stage. These cultivators were all gathered in the formation, while the nascent soul stage cultivators were constantly besieging the 8 kings. Now, these kings were all in a sorry state. They were all suppressed at a disadvantage. "All of you who enter my formation must die." Sakura's cold words directly filled the entire array diagram. As soon as his voice fell, the entire array diagram suddenly changed. In an instant, countless grayish-white chi of death emerged and filled the entire array diagram, completely blocking the exit of the array diagram and isolating it from the outside world. Not good. As soon as the formation changed, immediately, whether it was the cultivators inside or outside the formation, a thought appeared in their minds at the same time. They only felt that the aura of the formation instantly became unfathomable, and the connection with the heaven and earth could not be isolated. It completely merged with the entire heaven and earth, and an endless amount of power continuously entered the formation from the earth. Especially the immortal cultivators inside the formation, they almost noticed that something was wrong on the spot. All the cultivators who were besieging the White Bone Emperor used their methods to escape from the battle and return to the place where the cultivators gathered. There were a total of 40 nascent soul stage cultivators. In addition, thousands of elite cultivators were tightly huddled together. Their eyes revealed a trace of horror as they looked around, especially when they discovered that the sudden change in the formation had completely isolated their connection with the outside of the formation. We've been fooled. We should have thought of it earlier. How could the formation only have such a little ability? It foolishly allowed us to surround and kill it. Madame Tao's face suddenly changed, and she said with regret, "Senior sister, I can't feel the outside of the formation anymore. I'm afraid we've completely fallen into the space of the formation and cut off our connection with the outside world. I'm afraid we're in big trouble this time." Zhao Ji's face also changed greatly. "Enter my formation, all of you will die." When these words reached her ears, she unconsciously appeared a trace of fear. Formation, this was the embodiment of the extreme of the formation Tao. Di Shirtian watched coldly from the sidelines. He waved his saber at the entire formation and spat out a sentence that made the cultivators in the formation even more chilling. "In the formation, where the white bones cover, the undead will not be extinguished, and the fire will not be extinguished." Countless white bone flames fell from the saber and landed on the white bone ground, sinking into it in an instant. Suddenly, an incredible scene appeared. Kacha, among the countless white bones, a terrible sound of bones colliding rang out one after another. Pale white bone hands rose from under the white bones one after another. Then the head, then the body, quickly climbed out from under the white bones. Upon closer inspection, it was a skeleton army that flashed with the faint light of the fire seed in their minds. Team after team, they were resurrected continuously. They raised their heads to look at Di Shirtian, who was standing on the mountain of bones. Their eyes were filled with awe as they lined up neatly. They gathered into a square formation, holding sabers in their hands, bows and arrows, and their bodies exuded a strong aura of death. An invisible pressure was emitted from their bodies, intimidating the hearts of people. Bang, bang, bang. The 8 white bone kings sat down from their respective thrones and stood at the front of the skeleton legion. There were 8 phalanxes, each led by a king. Each phalanx had 3,000 skeleton warriors. In total, there were more than 20,000 skeleton warriors. The kind of aura formed by gathering together was enough to defeat anyone with a weak mind. Di Shirtian stood high above, standing at the center of the mountain of bones. He was truly like an emperor. One word was the law of the world. "Empress, look, it's the king. The king is back. Princess, the king is back." Di Shirtian used the body of the white bone emperor to let out a roar. He did not deliberately hide it. When he was transmitted to the formation map, he also appeared in the 10,000 Demon Valley. For a moment, because of the arrival of night, most of the demons, who were quietly cultivating and absorbing the essence of the sun and moon, were in an uproar. The first was Chi Hua and the others, who had been with Di Shirtian the longest. One by one, they opened their eyes abruptly, emitting an excited light, and rushed out of their respective cave abodes. They looked up and saw the majestic battle body in the formation map. They were extremely excited. From the aura, they instantly realized that the battle body must be the king's will. Shouts immediately sounded throughout the entire valley. Chun Shi, the red-crowned crane king, the black ape king, Little White, and the others rushed out at the first moment. They gathered in an empty space in the valley and raised their heads to look up. "It's really him." Chun Shi's eyes narrowed as he stared at the indomitable figure. At first glance, he knew that Di Shirtian had returned. He had observed the formation map countless times and was very clear about the changes in the formation map. Normally, the formation map would not have such an amazing change, and the White Bone Emperor would not take the initiative to attack. Now, the scene in the formation map was directly reversed. There was no other possibility except that Tion had returned. After all, in the formation map, he was the only one who could really control the formation map. Except for him, no one else could make the formation map have such a reversal. Moreover, after that incident, almost half of the divine vitality in Chun-Chi's body flowed into Tion's body. From that trace of aura, it was definitely not wrong. Brother is back. Little White blinked his eyes, his expression full of excitement. He looked at the figure in the void with admiration. After confirming it, the ordinary demons in the entire Myriad Demon Valley cheered and roared, venting the joy and excitement in their hearts. In the valley, 5 years had passed. According to Tion's plan, more than 10,000 demons had been born in the valley alone. In addition to the other demons who had come to take refuge in the southern barbarian lands, no less than 30,000 demons had gathered in the valley. Usually, Chi Hua and the others were constantly instilling the greatness of the king. They left a mark of Tion in their hearts. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 333. Not good. The formation diagram is changing. The owner of this formation diagram is controlling its operation. How despicable and cunning. He's been keeping a low profile for 5 whole years. Now that we've gathered more than half of our nascent soul cultivators, 2 of whom are in the astral body stage, and 1 of whom is in the body integration stage, he's taking advantage of our moment of carelessness to make a move. Outside the formation diagram, the cultivator who had been riding on the strange 9-headed bird forcefully suppressed the backlash in his body. Ignoring the crimson trail of blood at the corner of his mouth, he circulated his divine sense and recalled the violently shaking demon subduing pagoda. After shrinking it, he held it in his hand. Only then did he have time to observe the changes in the formation diagram. This cultivator was from the Myriad Beast sect, and his name was Xiao Yuan. There were 10 elders in the Myriad Beast sect. As for how the elders came to be, it was very simple. As long as you were a member of the sect, once you made a breakthrough from the nascent soul stage to the leaving aperture stage, you would naturally be promoted to become an elder and receive the treatment that an elder should receive. Among these elders, all of the cultivators above the transcendence tribulation stage had mysteriously left, so the body integration stage cultivators were the most powerful. Xiao Yuan was ranked 3rd among the 10 great elders. His cultivation base was already at the mid-body integration stage. Moreover, even among the cultivators who entered the southern barbarian lands, he was also one of the top existences. There were only 2 body integration stage experts in the southern wilderness. One of them was from the Yin-Yang Union sect and was called the Thousand Illusion Demoness. She was definitely as strong as Xiao Yuan. Xiao Yuan had only rushed over after Yang Xian had sent out the news. As soon as he arrived, he took over control of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. With a body integration stage expert like him controlling the pagoda, the power he could unleash was naturally on a completely different level compared to Yang Xian's. He had forcibly suppressed the White Bone Emperor under the pagoda for a full 5 years, and it was only now that he was finally able to break free. Martial Uncle Xiao, what should we do now? There are over 1,000 disciples trapped in the formation. These disciples are all the elites of the sect, so we have to save them no matter what. Otherwise, the losses to the sect this time will be far too great. Yang Xian quickly arrived before Xiao Yuan. There was a sliver of worry in his voice as he spoke respectfully. Among the thousands of cultivators in the formation, thousands of them were from the 10,000 Beast sect. There was also Zhao Ji, who had a very ambiguous relationship with him. Normally, they would flirt with each other. No one would believe that there was nothing going on between them. We're done for. A scheme. This is definitely a scheme of the Yao race. How despicable. They actually used a passive method to paralyze us. The devil race is so king cunning. For a moment, both the cultivators outside the formation and the cultivators inside the formation began to curse at the same time. Their eyes were filled with horror. However, it seemed that when they were cursing and scolding, they had never thought that with their actions towards the demon race, their wanton actions of encircling and killing the demon race, what right did they have to say the word despicable? The formation diagram is the ultimate embodiment of the way of formations. It contains endless mysteries. It seems that in the past, the formation diagram did not completely unleash its full power and could only passively resist our attacks. Now, the demon clan is activating the formation diagram from the inside, using the formation diagram's unique ability to form a space to trap everyone inside. Furthermore, the formation diagram is in harmony with the heavens and earth. Its power is immeasurable. The only thing we can do now is to attack the formation diagram with our strongest attacks from the outside and see if we can open up a passage. At the end of the day, Xiao Yuan was one of the most powerful cultivators on the Zijin continent. Ever since he began cultivating, he had probably lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. He was extremely experienced and had studied the formation diagram for 5 years. In a flash, he had already guessed the changes in the formation diagram. Everyone, no matter how powerful the formation diagram is, it will be destroyed one day. Right now, there's still several thousand of our companions inside. Let's gather our strength together and unleash our most powerful attacks in the same direction. Everyone here is a prodigy of the sect. Are we really going to be stopped by a mere formation diagram? Yang Xian's eyes flickered, and he suddenly shouted behind him. His voice was infused with true essence and instantly drowned out the chaotic scene before him, reaching everyone's ears. Outside the formation diagram, there were no less than 5,000 cultivators, including several dozen nascent soul cultivators. When this force was gathered together, it was definitely powerful. Under Yang Xian's call, the panicked cultivators seemed to have found a target, and they couldn't help but respond in unison. That's right. Attack and break this formation diagram. Everyone attack at the same time. I don't believe that a formation diagram can withstand the power of several thousand of us. Those who were able to come here were all elite disciples of some sect. Their quality and battle instincts were extremely outstanding. All of them began to shout. At this moment, Xiao Yuan naturally waved his hand and made the several thousand people temporarily quiet down. With a dignified expression, he said in a deep voice, "Since that's the case, everyone gather their strength together and pour it all into the demon's subduing pagoda, the most precious treasure of the Thousand Beasts sect. With the power of the pagoda, even if it's a formation diagram, it can still blast a passage out." With a glare, a powerful aura emerged from his body and swept out. Feeling this powerful deterrence, how could anyone have the slightest objection? All of them nodded in agreement, not to mention the outside of the formation diagram. On the other hand, Dishirtian had now transformed into the White Bone Emperor. Although the power in this body was surging, and he felt like the world was in his grasp in the formation diagram, he did not get carried away at all because of this. He coldly looked at the skeleton warriors that were divided into 8 legions in front of him and nodded to himself. Facing the 3,000 cultivators who were gathered together, he raised the battle saber in his hand and waved it forward with full force. He allowed the battle saber to tear the space in front of him and let out a loud roar, "Kill! Gaga!" As soon as Sakura gave the order, the flames in the eyes of the 8 white-boned sovereigns standing at the front suddenly surged, bursting out with traces of fighting spirit. Boom, boom, boom. The skeleton warriors let out strange cries that sent chills down people's spines. Their eyes burned with hollow flames as they followed behind their respective monarchs. They spewed out a strong aura of death towards the thousands of cultivators trapped in the arrayed diagram and rushed towards those people, especially the kings. When they walked, they stepped on the white bones. It was as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. The terrifying rumbling was mixed with a terrifying aura. All of a sudden, from all directions, they were divided into 8 battle formations, trapping all the cultivators in the middle. The situation was reversed on the spot. From the cultivators besieging these white bone emperors to the skeleton legion's sudden counterattack, It had only taken a few breaths of time. Not good. Don't let us surround you. Concentrate our strength and attack in one direction. Hurry up and think of a way to break the formation diagram. When they saw the White Bone Emperor leading the skeleton warriors to attack, all the cultivators suddenly became nervous. Some of them were quick-witted and shouted, "Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh." However, on the east side, a king with a white bone bow led 3,000 skeleton warriors who were also archers to stop hundreds of meters away from the cultivators. He pulled the bow in his hand and pulled it to a full moon. Especially the White Bone Emperor, when he pulled the huge bow, his whole body was full of unparalleled strength. The bow was pulled to a full moon on the spot. At the same time, on the bowstring, a white bone arrow flashing with white bone fire mysteriously appeared. The tip of the arrow pointed at the nascent soul stage cultivator in the front. The arrow condensed the whole body's essence, chi, and spirit, locking the other party at a time. The other skeleton archers also aimed the bows in their hands at their respective targets at the same time, only to hear the sound of the bowstring. The white bone arrow shot into the cultivators like locusts. This group of cultivators stood densely together. There was no place to dodge, especially the nascent soul stage cultivator that the White Bone Emperor had locked onto. Facing the unbelievably fast divine arrow, he didn't even have time to react. He could only block with a flying sword in front of him. However, under that sharp arrow, even the flying sword was instantly piercing through his heart. That unlucky guy, in the end, had a look of disbelief in his eyes. Obviously, he had never thought that he would be killed by a White Bone Emperor in the formation diagram. Those locust-like sharp arrows also instantly erupted with terrifying lethality. Although the cultivators in the encirclement could be considered elites, under the dense rain of arrows, they were like a group of mortals. They could only passively use the magic treasures in their hands and various spirit talismans to increase their defense. However, there were still hundreds of cultivators who were shot to death on the spot. They fell to the ground, their bodies full of shocking arrows. Bang, bang! As soon as the arrow rain stopped, the other monarchs immediately arrived. A monarch with a battle sword in his hand saw the group of nascent soul cultivators, and the fire in his eyes violently jumped. He swung his sword and slashed out like a heavenly punishment. The one he slashed at was Tao Sanyang. Tao Sanyang must be rich in experience. Before the battle sword arrived, she could already feel the tearing force in the air. Without even thinking, the peach blossom thousand desire miasma outside her became unprecedentedly gorgeous. Thousand desire lotus flowers constantly appeared. With a soft shout, hundreds of them bombarded the battle sword. Bang, bang, bang. Every thousand desire lotus flower was incomparably mysterious. The fragrance it emitted was the strongest aphrodisiac, and the leaves were the sharpest blades. If the lotus flower itself exploded, it was no less than a full-strength attack from a nascent soul cultivator. It appeared under the sword, and before it could touch the sword, it exploded under Madame Tao Sanyang's control. A series of explosions sounded like hundreds of tons of explosives exploding on the spot. The incomparably violent force immediately swept the battle sword in, and a huge destructive force rushed through the sword into the monarch's body. Gaga! When a monarch unleashed its true power and began to attack, it was definitely unimaginably terrifying. With a strange cry, the battle sword in its hand shook, domineeringly shaking off the destructive force around it. When the first attack failed, the flames in its eyes flickered even more fiercely. It swung the sword a second time at Tao Sanyang. At the same time, the skeleton warriors behind it ferociously and fearlessly let out strange cries as they pounced on the group of cultivators. The remaining white bone monarchs also charged into the battle. Those who die in the formation will have their souls immortal and become fire seeds. The high and mighty Sakura watched the battle below. The enraged monarch and the skeleton army didn't fear death at all. In the formation diagram, their battle prowess had increased by God knows how many times. Their numbers were also several times more than the cultivators. Under the endless attacks, they were like a small boat in the ocean. But Tion watched coldly and suddenly said something strange. However, as soon as his voice fell, he saw that among the cultivators who had just died in the hands of the skeleton warriors, the whole body and flesh disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. They turned into a mass of gray death chi and merged into the formation. And those cultivators were only left with a pile of bones. Their souls were all pulled out. Under an inexplicable force, these souls kept condensing strangely and turned into balls of dark green fire seeds. In less than a few breaths, the skeleton warriors crawled out of the bones one after another and turned into new undead spirits. It was just that they didn't have their original consciousness, only endless loyalty to Tion. They picked up their weapons and pounced on their original companions. This scene was really quite terrifying. This could be seen from the looks in the eyes of those cultivators. Go to hell. Just at this moment, behind Sakura, a seductive woman with a head of white hair suddenly rushed into the air. A pink ribbon nimbly followed the spirit snake that came out of the cave, but the edges of both sides were sharper than any blade and scarier. The pink ribbon shook, and even the surrounding space showed a distorted scene. It was slender and flexible and rolled toward his head. Its purpose was obvious. It wanted to directly bombard Tion's head, because whether it was the king or the emperor, even the other undead creatures, they were all fire seeds. The fire seeds existed in the mind, so it was destined that the head would be the most fatal position. This king has been waiting for you for a long time. The moment the pink ribbon appeared, Tion turned his body fiercely. Looking at the incomparably soft ribbon, the saber in his hand followed the force of the turn and slashed out fiercely. There was an indomitable and unstoppable domineering aura in the saber. Heaven block, heaven cut, earth block, earth split. In this world, there was a saying that softness could overcome hardness. However, his saber technique was completely fierce and domineering. What did it mean to overcome hardness with softness? If you were really subdued, it would only be because your hardness and domineering were not strong enough. You had to be so domineering that no softness could resist, dissolve, or dispel it. That was the true definition of strength. These were all just a contest of strength. If softness and hardness were to be described, there was no doubt that the ribbon was a kind of extreme softness, and Tion's saber was extremely fierce and domineering. Wherever the saber went, the space shook violently, showing signs of collapse. Bang! The ribbon and saber collided on the spot, and a terrible wave of air swept the surrounding air of death away. Even a mountain of bones below shook violently. At the location of the collision, strange circles of ripples appeared in the air. With a loud bang, the white-haired woman's body suddenly trembled. The ribbon quickly retracted. Everything in the formation diagram is under my control. Do you think I won't know just because you're hiding behind me? What a joke. A body integration cultivator? Don't even think about leaving the formation diagram in one piece. Tion spat out a cold disdain. The formation diagram was like his body. As long as he willed it, every corner of it would appear clearly in his mind. Nothing could escape his senses. From the beginning, he already knew that there was a powerhouse hiding behind him. It seemed like she was looking for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. However, he did not care at all. He did not point out at all. He was playing a game of cat and mouse. Boom, boom, boom. He broke the white-haired woman's attack with a single saber strike. Without hesitation, he stepped into the void. His huge body was like a mountain, filled with unimaginable pressure. Kill! Tion swung his saber. After practicing the basic saber technique countless times, a casual swing of his saber carried a mysterious charm. The white-haired woman was indeed very beautiful. She had a kind of seductive beauty. She was so beautiful that she was charming. The various temperaments on her body constantly changed, making people subconsciously want to immerse themselves in her charm. This woman was the strongest person in the formation diagram. She was called the Thousand Illusions Witch. Sensing the fierce aura contained in the saber, the thousand illusions which twisted her waist, waved the ribbon in her hand, and danced in the void just like that. Her dance posture was full of grace. Her beautiful and illusory body mysteriously split into two, and then into three. In the blink of an eye, there were 1,000 of them. Each of them was her, but each of them had a different posture. She was wearing a layer of gauze that was as thin as a cicada's wing. It gently covered some of her private parts. As she danced, the gauze could not hide the beauty of her body. The beauty was faintly discernible. Every move, every smile, and every movement could tug at one's heartstrings. It made one's eyes turn red and desire burst forth. Following the movements of the dance, waves of mysterious energy were emitted continuously, filling up the entire void. This kind of dance made one's blood boil. Even a blind person could open his eyes again, especially the 1,000 women. They had the same face, but in an instant, they put on all kinds of different seductive postures. As long as one was conscious and had not completely forgotten their feelings, even those without spirituality would pounce on them on the spot. On her wrist, there were a few mysterious bells. As she danced, they kept ringing. It also made one's mind instantly filled with all kinds of seductive scenes. Although Di Shirtian was now in the body of the White Bone Emperor, his consciousness and mind were his own. When he saw this strange dance, an inexplicable strong desire appeared in his mind. It was not just his eyes. Even in his mind, countless seductive figures appeared. This dance was called the 1,000 Illusions Sky Demon Dance. You're still a little lacking if you want to arouse my desire. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 334. The 1,000 Illusions Sky Demon Dance could be said to be the ultimate technique that made the 1,000 Illusions Demonis famous. Once she performed the dance, even the most determined cultivator would find it hard to escape her grasp and prostrate themselves before her. It was said that when she was born in the early years, countless young elites were bewitched by this terrifying 1,000 Illusions Sky Demon Dance and lost their minds. Or rather, they simply didn't want to reject it. As a result, they couldn't help but have sex with the 1,000 Illusions Demonis. After a night of pleasure, they enjoyed boundless bliss. However, their cultivation was unknowingly sucked into the 1,000 Illusions Demonis body during intercourse. After that, without exception, they all died miserably in the end. Therefore, there was a saying in the cultivation world, 1,000 illusions charming, bliss, soul dissipating. It was used to describe the 1,000 Illusions Demonis. It could be said that people both loved and feared her. Love was because the 1,000 Illusions Demonis could be said to be unrestrained and unrestrained. As long as she absolutely liked someone, even if it was on the ground or the sky, she could have a night of pleasure with you. With her methods, she could really make the person who had sex with her feel like he was in paradise. Unable to stop, the aftertaste was endless. It could be said to be the most beautiful moment in life that was worth remembering. However, this was only pleasing to the eye. If there were evil intentions, then it wouldn't just be enjoyment, but true ecstasy and bliss. You would never be able to wake up again. Therefore, it created the 1,000 Illusions Demonis reputation that people both loved and feared her. The strangest thing was that when she wasn't performing the 1,000 Illusions Sky Demon Dance, she was like a celestial that had fallen into the mortal world. It was so strange that she was simply a combination of a celestial and a demonis. The illusory heavenly demon dance was a peerless divine ability that the illusory she-devil had created by combining the essence of the illusory heavenly demon dance and the illusory shadow art that she had obtained by chance from an incomplete heavenly demon ecstasy dance. When it was used, not only did it possess the boundless charm of the heavenly demon dance, it also possessed the miraculous ability of the illusory shadow art to transform one's body. When she danced, her entire body would split into two into three, and three into 1,000. 1,000 bodies meant 1,000 different postures, and every single one of them was the embodiment of extreme charm. She was wearing a light veil, and as she danced, her perfect body was like a demon's. Her entire body was faintly discernible, and her charm was displayed to the extreme. As long as one was of the opposite sex, it would be difficult for them to escape. To be honest, when Di Shirtion saw the 1,000 Illusions sky demon dance, he instantly felt his mouth go dry. Of course, this was only a feeling in his mind. It was impossible for him to have this kind of reaction as an imperial emperor. However, his heart was already moved, which meant that if his real body was here, he would definitely have the same feeling as his consciousness. It could be seen that the 1,000 Illusions sky demon dance was not just a little bit terrifying. However, the 1,000 Illusions demoness clearly did not expect that Di Shirtion could be said to be an ancestor level figure when it came to things like desire. When it appeared, he immediately used his powerful mental state to forcefully suppress it. If it was not for the fact that he had not unsealed the demon vein that represented desire, he would not have to go through so much trouble and could directly absorb the power of desire on the spot. Now, it would not be affected. In his mind, he immediately activated the royal tyrant heart art, and his mind instantly transformed into a supreme emperor. Any desire could only be used by him, but it could not affect his will. The death of gods and demons. Di Shirtion's entire body was filled with a domineering aura, and the fire in his eyes was unprecedentedly blazing. An emperor's aura that was above all living beings spewed out, sweeping through the entire formation space. The saber in his hand slashed out without hesitation. This slash contained an indescribably terrifying concept that condensed in the saber. The laws and the surroundings were mysteriously reversed under the influence of the saber. It turned into an unimaginable force, and the endless power of heaven and earth was instantly drawn by the saber. The saber intent that was like a mountain and prison covered everything within 1,000 feet of the saber on the spot. The saber swept through the air, and the flames on the saber burned fiercely. As the saber was swung, terrifying figures charged out of it at the same time. Each of them was dozens of feet tall and wielded a saber in their hands. There were thousands of them, and each of them had a strength that was not inferior to any body integration cultivator. The moves they swung out with their sabers were as fast as lightning, and they were all different from each other. Countless fiend god war bodies covered an area of 1,000 feet completely under saber light. The boundless saber chi contained an incomparably terrifying power. The might of the fiend god war body could be said to be Di Shirtion's most powerful battle technique. It was a peerlessly powerful battle technique that he had comprehended from the insights of countless fiend gods. As the saber was swung out, countless fiend gods danced in unison. The power of these fiend gods' attacks was not inferior to their own in the slightest. Furthermore, each and every one of the fiend gods unleashed a different battle technique, but they were all the most fearsome killing moves. The area that they covered was over 10,000 feet, and the entire area was under attack. Under such circumstances, even dodging was meaningless. Furthermore, as soon as the attacks landed on the target, the thousands of sabers would immediately turn around at the same time and unleash a barrage of attacks. If a body integration cultivator were to face thousands of body integration stage fiend gods, how would they be able to defend themselves? How would they be able to escape? There is no way that they would be able to defend themselves, no matter how many defensive treasures they had. This was a sure kill move. This was an unstoppable killing move, one of Di Shirtion's trump cards. How could it not be terrifying? As the saber was swung out, the 1,000 illusions, which had already transformed into thousands of identical figures. Even their auras were identical, making it difficult to see where her true body was. However, as soon as Di Shirtion unleashed the fiend god war body, there was no need for him to search for her true body. The terrifying battle technique instantly unleashed an unstoppable sharpness. One after another, their bodies were chopped into countless pieces by the fiend god sabers. Their beautiful bodies couldn't arouse the slightest bit of pity from these fiend gods. Even the Thousand Illusions Witch's true body was unable to dodge such an attack. She was immediately struck by several sabers. The pink ribbon danced like a swimming dragon, blocking a single saber strike. Immediately, 10 sabers rained down on her, each strike containing the might of a body integration cultivator. It shook heaven and earth. It was obvious that the ribbon was an extremely rare treasure. However, under such a relentless barrage of attacks, it was chopped into pieces on the spot by the 100th saber strike. The pieces danced in the air like pink butterflies. Then, before she could react, hundreds of sabers with terrifying sharpness slashed down on her body like lightning. Her beautiful body was instantly chopped into thousands of pieces. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Remember, my name is Lin Shur. I'll remember you. Kiki. The thousands of fiend gods' figures suddenly disappeared. Under the onslaught of sabers, countless terrifying cracks appeared on the white bone ground. The Thousand Illusions Witch's body was dismembered and she died. Strangely, after her death, her soul did not turn into a fire seed like the other cultivators. Instead, it mysteriously collapsed like a firework. As it collapsed, a tinkling laughter rang out in the air. The flames in Di Shurtian's eyes flickered as he looked at the spot where her soul had collapsed. After a moment of silence, he said, "So, it's an avatar, a second primordial spirit. No wonder." After saying that, he secretly memorized the Thousand Illusions Witch's name in his heart and turned to look at the battlefield in the formation map. On the battlefield, the undead army led by the White Bone Sovereign had the buff of the formation map, and a portion of the cultivators were suppressed. The cultivators were trapped in the formation map and felt uneasy. In addition, the White Bone Sovereign's ferocious battle strength. The tens of thousands of skeleton warriors were fearless, and the cultivators directly turned into undead life forms after death. There were many reasons. At the beginning of the battle, the situation had reached a white-hot state. Every second, there were cultivators killed. Thousands of cultivators, but after Di Shurtian killed the 1,000 illusionary demonists, there were only a few left. The last 3 nascent soul cultivators were also killed by several white bone sovereigns. Rumble. Suddenly, in this space of bones, a terrible roar came from above. It was unknown how much bombardment it had suffered. The space above the formation map was originally gray and filled with an endless amount of death chi. At this time, the fog rolled violently and was violently blasted away. A terrifying crack that could allow 100 people to pass through appeared. From the crack, the first thing that could be seen was a pagoda shining with an intense light that had never been seen before. The pagoda exuded an aura that was incomparably majestic and filled with endless deterrence. It was extremely terrifying, as if the heavens had descended to the world. It was clear that the crack had been created by the collision. Avoiding the pagoda, one could still see the outside world. Save me. When the crack appeared, it was the scene of the last cultivator in the formation map being stabbed in the heart by a skeleton warrior. The cultivator looked at the crack with a look of fear and unwillingness in his eyes. His shrill cry not only echoed in the formation map, but also spread through the crack to outside the formation map. The cultivators in the formation map were all killed. Those who invade my myriad demon valley will be killed no matter how far away they are. May I ask, who else dares to step into this formation map? Di Shurtian naturally saw the crack as well. He coldly snorted, and his words were full of provocation. It effortlessly spread out of the formation map and landed in the ears of the thousands of cultivators outside the formation map. Those who invade my myriad demon valley will be killed no matter how far away they are. These words were said in front of thousands of cultivators without any concealment. They carried a strong sense of provocation and were indescribably domineering. I'll set up an arena here and see who has the guts to come in. If you dare to come in, I'll dare to kill you. As long as one was not a fool, there was no way they could not understand the meaning behind his words. For a moment, they listened to that domineering voice. The expressions of the thousands of cultivators outside the formation map changed drastically. They turned white and yellow, as if they had opened a cloth-dyeing workshop. There was an indescribable brilliance and an indescribable ugliness. Many of them clenched their fists, but their feet involuntarily took a step back. Brothers, if you have the ability, please help me subscribe so that I can write more passionately. After all, authors are also human. They also need passion. To be continued, if you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 335. I can't believe the 1,000 illusions she-devil has perished. After the battle and the formation diagram ended and the souls of several thousand cultivators were converted into fire seeds, the number of skeletons increased by several thousand. Furthermore, these fire seed skeletons were even more resilient and emitted an even more powerful aura. After the souls of the nascent soul cultivators were converted into fire seed skeletons, the formation diagram was filled with an even stronger aura. Their bodies were much larger than the other skeletons, and they were almost half the size of the white bone monarch. Clearly, their auras were much more powerful than the other skeletons. Because of that, the aura in the formation diagram became even more profound, and the formation diagram began to devour the cultivators, making it much more powerful. When Xiao Yuan saw what was happening inside the formation diagram, his expression turned very unsightly. He didn't see the 1,000 illusions she-devil, who had been the first to enter the formation diagram, at all. He immediately realized that the 1,000 illusions she-devil had perished in the formation diagram. Even as a body integration cultivator, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine, and he couldn't help but gasp. He glanced at the other cultivators and saw that none of them had been spared. A chill ran down his spine, and he didn't know what to say in response to Di Shitian's domineering and provocative words. The mist outside the formation diagram gradually dissipated, and the formation diagram returned to its original state, covering the sky above the myriad demon valley. The illusory scenes within the formation diagram continued to appear in front of everyone's eyes. Emperor Whitebone was still at the center, and the 8 bone monarchs were seated on their respective thrones. All around them, the skeleton core was constantly patrolling and roaming around. However, there wasn't a single cultivator to be seen. That told everyone that most of the cultivators in the formation diagram had perished. That's terrifying. There was a body integration cultivator in the formation diagram just now, but he perished just like that. The formation diagram's power is terrifying. It's already so freakish when it's not activated, and now that it's activated, it's able to devour thousands of cultivators. How are we supposed to fight? I've long felt that the Southern Barbarian is too strange. My goodness, this place is too strange. In my opinion, we should hurry up and leave this place. Anyway, it doesn't matter where we go to kill the demon clan. If we stay here, I'm afraid we'll really die here. Those who offend the myriad demon valley will be killed no matter how far away they are. Heavens, is there an old monster of the demon clan in this valley? To be able to say such words, it was too overbearing. I don't think he's more powerful than a demon king. For a moment, more than 5,000 high-spirited immortal cultivators were dumbfounded by the power of the array diagram that annihilated thousands of their cultivators. Not a single one of them dared to stand out. Even if they had the courage, they couldn't take a step forward. Enter the array diagram? TCH. No one was a fool. With the cruel reality before them, no one dared to rashly get involved. It could be seen that when the cultivators looked at the formation and saw the skeletons and monarchs in the formation, they no longer looked as confident as before. Instead, there was only an inexplicable fear. Wow, Big Brother D is really too powerful. He can even kill that Demoness. What kind of battle skill is that? It's really too fierce. It can actually form so many powerful gods and demons. I want to learn it. When Big Brother D comes back, I'll make him teach it to me no matter what. The vermilion bird's eyes were completely filled with countless starlight as she chirped. Her eyes were blurred as if she had fallen into some kind of beautiful fantasy. Big Brother, it must be Big Brother who's back. This move is called the God and Demon Morning. It's a saber technique that Big Brother created himself. Other than my Big Brother, no one else can use it. That's great. Little White was also jumping on the ground. Her eyes were filled with joy and happiness, as well as a kind of urgent anticipation. Her eyes kept looking up and down, wanting to find that figure as soon as possible. However, she was destined to be disappointed. The White Bone Emperor stood quietly at the highest peak, standing proudly and motionlessly. His body was as thick as a mountain. Any living creature could only look up to his body. It's been 5 years. The king is finally back. Brothers, we didn't let down the king's trust. In the end, the myriad Demon Valley didn't suffer any mishaps in our hands. Chi Hua muttered to himself, and his eyes were filled with tears. Bai Yu, Ing Kong, and the other 4 looked at each other and saw a sense of relief in each other's eyes. At the same time, there was also a strong sense of excitement. No one knew how much pressure Chi Hua and the others had endured in the past 5 years since the formation was activated. The safety of the entire myriad Demon Valley was all on their shoulders. That kind of pressure made even their breathing feel extremely heavy. They were worried at all times. They didn't dare to relax for a moment. After the Black Ape King transformed, he was a tall and sturdy black man with explosive muscles all over his body. Moreover, his arms were extremely long, just like a long ape. This could be considered his unique characteristic. The aura he emitted was extremely ferocious. Looking at the battle scene in the formation, his eyes flickered. After a long time, he sighed, I originally thought that the gap between me and Brother Shurtion would have narrowed a lot after transforming in the past 5 years. Judging from the situation just now, I'm afraid that the gap has become even bigger. It seems that I should also make a choice. There was an inexplicable charm in his words. It's really him. Chen-Chi's expression was very complicated. It was not the first time she had seen Di Shurtion use the God and Devil Morning. Back then, she had seen it with her own eyes in the 100 Flowers Valley. However, the saberback then was simply dwarfed by the current saber. There was no comparison at all. When its true power was displayed, it was really fierce to the extreme. Even a combination realm cultivator was smashed into pieces by the saber. Their divine souls were turned into dust. Although this was because the White Bone Emperor's body was used in the formation map to display its power, one could see that the strength of the God-Devil Child was definitely not ordinary. I'm afraid that only he can create such a domineering battle skill. In Chen-Chi's mind, inexplicably, the heroism of Sakura's mouth that year when he said, killing songs, men walk inexplicably appeared. Unconsciously, it seemed that at that time, a strange figure had already walked into her heart. Chen-Chi shook her head and smiled bitterly. She looked at the majestic figure in the formation with a complicated expression and unconsciously brushed her lower abdomen. She turned and left. The red-crowned Crane King looked at Chen-Chi's figure with a thoughtful look in its eyes. It was silent. In the valley, the large group of demonic beasts cheered loudly. After witnessing the slaughter of several thousand cultivators, their confidence in the formation grew rapidly. They no longer felt as uneasy as before, only a deep sense of certainty. They became extremely confident and no longer had any doubts. Once the formation was unleashed, its true power was displayed. This was also the reason why formation diagrams occupied such an important position in the world. With a formation diagram in hand, coupled with a decent cultivation, even a rogue cultivator would have the ability to block the entrance of a large sect. After blocking for hundreds or thousands of years, the sect would probably be in a state of decline. It was too ferocious. The fierce battle in the formation had only lasted for less than an hour. After Di Shurtion saw that the group of cultivators outside had been intimidated, he did not have much scruples and withdrew his mind from the White Bone Emperor's body. He returned to his main body. After returning to his body, a deep sense of fatigue came from his mind. With this incident, I should be able to temporarily intimidate them. However, there are still thousands of cultivators outside the formation. It seems that they don't dare to easily step into the formation again. If that's the case, it's probably impossible to kill thousands of them again. If that's the case, there'll be a huge problem. Di Shirtian channeled the Huangji's Shocking World book while secretly pondering in his mind. The reason why the formation could erupt with such a powerful power was entirely because he was controlling it. Controlling the formation to fight consumed a terrifying amount of mental energy, especially when controlling the White Bone Emperor, controlling a power that was even more powerful than his own. Fighting with a completely unfamiliar power was a huge burden on his mind. It was like a child trying to hold a heavy axe. If he wanted to wield it, the amount of energy he needed to consume would naturally increase by several times. Otherwise, he would probably hurt himself. Fortunately, Di Shirtian had a peak experience before, so it was very easy for him to control it. However, the consumption of his mind was still not to be underestimated. Especially when he used a battle skill like the Death of the Gods and Devils. The burden was even heavier. That was why when he retracted his mind, he felt a strong sense of fatigue. He secretly pondered. The thousands of cultivators in the southern wilderness were definitely a hidden danger that could not be ignored. In a head-on confrontation, without the help of the formation, Di Shirtian was not arrogant enough to say that he could escape unscathed. However, they were existences that he had to face. He couldn't avoid them. Moreover, he didn't want to avoid them. Seeing those cultivators who entered the southern wilderness, he didn't intend to let them leave unscathed. Okay, tomorrow I'll give them an experience that they will never forget. Didn't you want to besiege my 10,000 Demon Valley? Tomorrow I'll give you a 10-sided ambush. Di Shirtian's thoughts flashed quickly in his mind. Not long after, a cold arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. The bewitching 7 sins appeared on his knees. His hand were placed on the Guqin. When the Huangji true force was channeled through his hands, it flowed through the Guqin. Then it returned to his body. Slowly, he entered into meditation again. There was a huge amount of spiritual energy and desire power floating outside his body. Next to him, Medusa was also meditating. She looked like she wanted to push her whole body's essence, chi, and spirit to the peak. Under the night sky, there was silence. At the top of the mountain, even the sound of the night birds could not be heard. Time passed quietly in this silence. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 336. Darkness and dawn always came one after another. After the darkest moment of the day gradually passed, in the east, a trace of light that was not very strong slowly dispelled the darkness from the world. The red sun climbed out of the sky, but in front of it, there seemed to be a layer of clouds that could not be dispelled that blocked its brilliance. It seemed that there should be a cool weather today. This kind of weather could not be more common in the current autumn season. Between dawn and dawn, a cool breeze blew past. On some ordinary trees, withered yellow leaves floated down and fell to the ground. Over time, they would turn into nutritious fertilizer and nourish the mother tree. As the saying goes, fallen leaves return to their roots. When the first ray of light appeared, Di Shirtian also exhaled a long, turbid breath and opened his eyes. In his eyes, there was a trace of imperceptible light flashing by, and then it returned to calmness. It just seemed to be deep for a moment. He slowly stood up, holding the crystal-clear 7 Sins demonic zither in his left hand, and the tiger soul that even the scabbard could not hide its domineering aura was on his back. Dressed in a black robe, he stood proudly on the mountain peak, quietly looking at the southern barbarians. After a night of quiet cultivation, the mental energy that he had used to control the formation diagram had long recovered. Now he had pushed it to a peak state. His entire essence, chi, and spirit had reached the peak state. In this state, the combat strength that he could display was definitely at the peak of the peak. With the royal true force constantly stimulating the flesh and blood of his body, there was always a numb and warm feeling in his body. It was as if every inch of his flesh and blood was constantly vibrating. It was extremely magical. There must be a large number of cultivators in the southern barbarians. What are you going to do? Medusa also woke up from her cultivation. She walked to Deschertien's side, glanced at him, and asked coldly. There was a strange mirror in her hand that kept turning back and forth. The mirror reflected natural light from time to time. It's very simple. Kill them. Deschertien was very indifferent. Since they dare to come to the southern barbarians, they should be prepared to die. I don't mind sending them on their way. It just so happens that I have a piece of music that I can use to send them off. It shouldn't be too hard on them. As if responding to his words, one of the strings on the guillotine in his hands inexplicably jumped, producing a crisp sound. Deschertien clearly expressed the spirituality of the ancient zither. As a natal magic treasure, Deschertien could clearly feel that there was a cheerful and joyful atmosphere in the zither. Music? Send him off? Medusa's eyes, which did not seem to be affected by external things, could not help but flicker a few times. His eyes suddenly fell on the bewitching zither, revealing a pensive expression. She naturally recognized the zither in Deschertien's hands. She had personally witnessed its might when she fought against the ancestor of the Leaf family all those years ago. The sound waves were like a tide, and the sound blades were extremely sharp. Even space seemed to be sliced apart by the sharpness of the sound blades. Just the attack of the sound blades was enough to make Seven Sins an extraordinary treasure. The scene of the sound blades wantonly flying was still vivid and unforgettable. It left a deep impression on her. But with regards to Sakra's attainments in music, she had only heard with her own ears the music he played outside the Hundred Flowers Valley. It was indeed very pleasant to listen to. Every piece of music seemed to contain a unique story, a kind of beautiful mood, just like the phoenix courting the phoenix, which was really beautiful beyond compare. It made people unconsciously indulge in it. As for Deschertien's move to leave the southern barbarians and go out to learn the zither, she couldn't help but secretly nod. She thought that the time was quite worth it. He could fight with the zither, but she didn't think that those affectionate music could have any lethality. Did he expect the cultivators to be influenced by the sound of the zither? That was simply preposterous. She couldn't help but have some doubts in her heart, but also some inexplicable expectations. They are guests from afar. Since they have been in the southern barbarians for such a long time, if we don't greet them properly, wouldn't others say that we are too defeated? Let's go. Deschertien glanced at Medusa indifferently. He also saw the doubts in her eyes, but he didn't open his mouth to explain anything. Some things, only facts were the most real. No longer reluctant to leave, he got on the floating cloud boat. With a wave of his hand, a table and chair appeared at the bow of the boat. The ancient zither was gently placed on the table, and he sat down on the chair condensed directly by clouds. During this time, the floating cloud boat also naturally continued to move forward. It was only 1,000 miles away from the southern barbarians. With its speed, it only took a short time. Clang, clang, clang. Deschertien looked at the southern barbarians from afar. His hands were already placed on the strings of the zither. The Huangji true force in his body revolved at will, and it naturally poured into his 10 fingers. He pinched the strings of the zither, and it was full of tension. Suddenly, 3 zither sounds full of slaughter suddenly sounded. With the zither sounds, the Huangji true force naturally poured into the zither strings, and with the zither strings beating, it integrated into the zither sounds. The miraculous thing was that the royal true power that entered the strings did not transform into sound waves or sound blades that wantonly danced around like before. Instead, it transformed into a strange rhythm that blended into the zither music, blending into the unique charm of the zither music, causing the clear and melodious zither music to be like a tide that disregarded the boundaries of space. It swept in all directions, and it didn't gradually disappear because of the distance at all. Instead, it was consistent from beginning to end. It enveloped all the creatures within 1,000 miles, as if the zither sounds were ringing in their ears. It was incomparably clear. Listen, what's this sound? It's the zither sounds. I've learned how to play the zither. This is definitely the zither sounds. However, these 3 notes all have a strong murderous aura. It's too terrifying. Even my heart is beating with it. D-Shirtian zither sounds had just started, and it directly spread to the southern barbarians as if it ignored the distance. There were only 3 simple notes, but the murderous aura inside was louder and stronger since the first note. Most of the cultivators who had been guarding outside the arrayed diagram of the myriad demon valley felt that their hearts were beating with the zither sounds. They were affected and beat violently. The sound was so loud that it was as if it was going to jump directly out of their chests. One by one, their faces couldn't help but change, and their hearts were filled with horror. All the cultivators became nervous at the same time. Many of them looked directly at the cultivators above the nascent soul stage, as if they wanted to gain confidence from them. What an overbearing, murderous sound. Just a few notes can have such a great impact. Who's playing the zither? Could it be a zither family? Xiao Yuan looked up in the direction of the zither sounds, and various thoughts flashed through his mind quickly. No, although the zither family is an ancient family, it has always followed the family rule of seclusion. In terms of music, there shouldn't be such a murderous tune. Who on earth has such incredible attainments in the zither? No matter how he guessed, D-Shirtian would not stop the music in his hands because of anyone. The 3 notes of murderous sound were just the beginning. The sound of the zither continued to flow out from his hands. Each note was sonorous and powerful. It didn't sound like the sound of an ancient zither, but more like a pipa. Only a pipa could fully display such a sound full of golden spears and armor horses. But don't forget, D-Shirtian didn't have to worry at all. An ordinary zither was a 7-string zither, but his 7 sins was a 9-string zither. The extra 2 strings made the ancient zither more magical. Even the sonorous sound of a pipa could be perfectly displayed. There was no need to be rigid about whether it was an ancient zither, a pipa, or even a guzheng. It had almost integrated the essence of most of the music into one. The sound of the zither gradually rose. In the sound of the zither, there was no tenderness at all. There was only a kind of inspiring scene of the golden drums and battle bugles before the soldiers went to war. It brought people's minds into a kind of battlefield where 2 armies were facing each other. That kind of wind and rain came, and a strong murderous aura rose into the sky, enveloping the entire battlefield. As the sound of the zither deepened, that kind of tense atmosphere became stronger. In the southern wilderness, unknowingly, it seemed to have become a battlefield. Medusa looked at Sakura in astonishment. Her eyes were filled with astonishment. Once the sound of the zither started, it could create such a golden and murderous aura in 1,000 miles of territory. Such a method could be said to be unbelievable. But she didn't know that what D-Shirtian was playing was the most shocking ambush from 10 sides in the world. Ambush from 10 sides was one of the top 10 ancient songs when D-Shirtian was in Huaxia in his previous life. In his previous life, there was no conclusion about the age of the composition of this song. The information could be traced back to the Tang dynasty. In the famous long poem Pipa Song, written by Bai Ji, 772 to 846, it could be found that the author Bai Ji had heard Pipa music about fierce battle scenes. Ambush from 10 sides was widely spread. It was one of the traditional Pipa songs of Huaxia, also known as Huayin Conquering Chu. In this chapter, the music described the scene of the decisive battle between Chu and Han in 202 BC. The Han army defeated the Chu army with the ambush from 10 sides. Overlord Xiang, you committed suicide in the Wu River, and Liu Bang won. At the end of the Ming dynasty and the beginning of the Qing dynasty, in the biography of Tang Pipa of the 4 Zhao Tang collection, there was a record of the scene when the Pipa player Tang Ying played the song Chu Han. When the 2 armies fought, the sound shook heaven and earth, and the roof tiles flew down. Slowly and carefully, there was the sound of golden drums, the sound of swords and crossbows, the sound of men and horses. It made those who heard excited at first, then frightened, and unable to weep. It was so touching. The music was divided into 3 chapters. The first chapter was divided into 4 parts: setting up camp, blowing and beating, selecting generals, arranging formations, and marching. It fully set off the tense atmosphere before the battle. It gave people the feeling that a storm was about to come. It expressed the mighty aura of the soldiers and the valiant and vigorous majesty of the army. Those who heard it all collapsed into their minds. With the sound of the zither, even their blood was boiling. It was as if they were in the middle of a battlefield. The second chapter was divided into 3 parts: ambush, small battle, and big battle. The scene of the ambush, the scene of the calm and tense atmosphere, the scene of the close combat of the 2 armies, the scene of the rapid breathing, and even the scene of the life and death battle. It completely outlined the various scenes of the battlefield. As for the last chapter, it was incomparably tragic, as if it was at the end of the road. One section after another, and one section after another, it was simply incomparably tense. It was really the most famous song in the battlefield of ancient and modern times. When he was learning the zither from Katomi, Deshurtian at least didn't hear a famous song like Ambush from 10 Sides in this world. This song was the original song he heard in his previous life. With the addition of his current zither skills, he forcibly deduced it by himself. It could be said that this song had never been heard in the Zijin continent. But when the sound of the zither started, he could already see the extraordinariness of Ambush from 10 Sides. The sound of the zither rose and fell, setting up camp, blowing, and appearing from the fingers like flowing water. At the same time, the floating cloud boat had already approached the southern barbarian land. In the void, he could already see the familiar scenery of the southern barbarian land. Bang, bang, bang. The unique charm contained in the countless notes was played when the generals were called. In an instant, an incredible scene mysteriously appeared in the sky above the southern barbarian land. In the void, an ancient battlefield appeared impressively. In the battlefield, soldiers were constantly condensing in the rapid sound of the zither. These soldiers were all dressed in battle armor, neatly arranged in a battle formation, as if it was really calling out generals. The faster the sound of the zither, the more soldiers appeared. The sound of killing when the weapons collided. The sound of neat footsteps. Each of them revealed a strong, iron blood, murderous aura. The number kept increasing, and there were about 100,000 of them. Standing in the void, the aura emitted by all the soldiers condensed together, and the fierce, murderous aura that erupted was like a mountain or a prison. It was as if a violent mountain suddenly covered the sky above the entire southern barbarian land. It was actually a scene formed by the zither intent in the sound of the zither. It seemed incomparably illusory, but the fierce murderous aura was not reduced at all. When it pressed down, it was really like toppling mountains and overturning seas. In music, in terms of realms, it could be divided into ordinary, sound bewitching heart, sound wave like tide, sound blade, and sound imitation. These were the 4 realms that Deshurtian knew. Among them, ordinary sound bewitching heart was not worth mentioning. In fact, just like the lion's roar and tiger's roar technique in the secular world, it had the power of shock and deterrence. It was the most basic manifestation of a sound attack. In the past, Deshurtian used the tiger's roar from time to time in the Tiger Hill mountain range, which was in this category. At that time, in the roar, there was almost no demonic vitality poured in. It was purely roaring with sound. The sound was so loud that it could make people bleed from the 7 orifices. It was the embodiment of overbearingness. Sound wave like tide and sound blade were already achieved by Deshurtian long ago. The solid sound wave and the sharp sound blade had always been the powerful means of attack that he relied on. From a mortal sound to the sound wave, and then to the sound blade. Step by step, each step contained boundless mysteries. But to be honest, the first 3 realms were just a kind of foundation. The real perfect manifestation of a sound attack was the fourth realm, sound imitation. The artistic conception contained in the music, the charm it possessed, and with supreme attainments and powerful cultivation, it could trigger the Tao rhythm of heaven and earth out of thin air. It could truly turn the artistic conception in the sound of the zither into reality in front of the eyes. Using this charm for one's own use, it could exert incredible power. This was the real strength of cultivating the music. Of course, it was impossible to achieve phonetic impersonation without a song with a unique charm. Di Shirtian still remembered the scene in the stone tablet that he saw in the Zither Sound Valley. The long river that connected heaven and earth was simply condensed by someone with the charm and artistic conception in the Zither music. As long as the other party was willing, he could drive it to drown thousands of creatures at any time. Unknowingly, Di Shirtian had also reached this step. The things that were imitated could be regarded as the evolution of the sound blade. It was formed by countless sound blades and sound waves, and naturally had powerful combat power. Di Shirtian was now going to give the cultivators of the southern barbarian lands a 10-sided ambush. He didn't know if he should feel sad for those cultivators. Oh no! Xiao Yuan's face changed greatly and became abnormally pale all of a sudden. Looking at the 100,000 troops condensed out of thin air above his head, that kind of horror could not be concealed at all. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Sound imitation? No, it's impossible. In this world, except for those old guys of the Zither family, how could anyone reach the realm of sound imitation?" At this moment, even the mind of the combination stage couldn't suppress his horror. It was full of disbelief. In the myriad demon valley, the demons gathered again, listening while watching the incredible scene in the void. However, Chun Shi, Chi Hua, and the others were not as surprised as they should have been. On the contrary, they looked very normal and natural. It was as if they were a little numb, or they were used to it. This music is Brother's. That's great. Brother is really nearby. Brother is the most powerful. He's going to teach these bad guys a lesson. I know him. Mom was locked up by them. Little White jumped on the ground and was very happy. She was the little princess of the myriad demon valley, and no one dared to say anything to her. Listening to the music, she was very happy for a moment. Looking at Xiao Yuan and the others outside, her eyes showed a look of disgust. King is the strongest. Chi Hua and the others only had one belief in their hearts. Their loyalty had long been unwavering, and they believed in Di Shirtian without reservation. They had never doubted his strength, and they thought that anything Di Shirtian did was normal. There was only admiration and reverence in their hearts, and they didn't feel the slightest bit surprised. It's best to beat the bad guys and kill them all. The vermilion bird was eager to see the world in chaos. It laughed and flapped its wings, flying up and down, and seemed to be very excited. How many tricks does Di Shirtian have that he hasn't revealed yet? Chunshi murmured to himself. First, it was the formation, then it was a powerful battle technique like the demonic gods wore, and now it's such a powerful sound attack. Apart from these, how many more tricks does he have that others don't know? But how did he encounter so many opportunities in such a short time? Could it be that you are really a peerless prodigy of the demon race? Could it be that you are the embodiment of the entire demon race's destiny? Looking at Sakura using all kinds of methods one after another, Chunshi didn't believe that these were all of his methods. Who knew what kind of secret techniques he was hiding in his hands? I'm so tired today that I'm dozing off while writing. National Day is coming soon. Have fun, everyone. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 337. After sorting out all the impressions of Di Shirtian in his mind, Chunshi couldn't help but shake his head slightly. It seemed that since he came to the southern barbarian land, he had been creating all kinds of incredible things. When he entered the southern barbarian land, he was just a little monster, but in a short time, he became a monster beast, awakened his innate magical power, and became a monster beast king. Then, he went from a monster beast to a monster beast and condensed his inner core. It was only 3 years. Usually, he didn't feel it, but now that he thought about it carefully, he could feel the strangeness of Tion. It was as if his existence was used to pique the rules and common sense of the Zijin continent. The realm that other monster beasts might not be able to reach in hundreds or thousands of years was easily achieved, and he had endless magical powers. I really don't know where he got all these things. Chun-Shi sighed bitterly. In the end, he could only regard him as an anomaly. Perhaps he really condensed a great luck that he had never had before and was favored by the heavens and earth. If Sakura were to know of such thoughts, he would probably scoff disdainfully before tossing it to the back of his mind with a laugh. Only he himself understood what he relied on to be able to obtain what he had today. Perhaps it was related to his own karmic luck, but the true key was still his unwillingness to give up, unwavering belief, and never slacking hard work. Step by step, he walked over firmly. It was just because he had some innate advantages in terms of intelligence. To be able to reach today, there was no trace of water in it. Clang, clang, clang. In the zither sound, the sharp killing sound became more and more intense. Bang, bang, bang. The song Ambush from 10 Sides had unknowingly played to the chapter of formation and formation. The killing aura filled the entire southern barbarian land, covering the heaven and earth. It was a huge, ancient battlefield. The ancient battlefield that appeared was really worthy of the name of a battlefield. At the same time, in the southern barbarian land, because of the sudden appearance of the scene, many cultivators fled out of fear, wanting to escape from the southern barbarian land. However, when they were running away, the scenery in front of them changed. Their bodies inexplicably appeared in a cold place. Even the soil under their feet was strangely dark red. It was as if red water could be squeezed out of it if one pinched it. In the blink of an eye, all 5,000 cultivators of the southern wilderness, including Xiao Yuan and those nascent soul cultivators, mysteriously appeared in this field at the same time. This kind of reversal didn't even give them the slightest chance to resist. Their minds were in a trance, and when they looked again, they were already here. Ancient battlefield. What a powerful sound mimicry. Everyone, be careful. If I'm not wrong, we must be on an ancient battlefield formed by the artistic conception of the zither song. There's no point in running away. Everyone, gather around me and form a circle. Pour your true energy into the Yao Ceiling Pagoda like last time. With the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's ability, it should be able to withstand the sound attack. Xiao Yuan took a deep breath. His eyes were bright with powerful deterrence. He glanced at the many cultivators around him and said calmly. He didn't show the inner panic on his face. After that, regardless of whether the others agreed or not, he gently threw the Yao Ceiling Pagoda in his hand. The pagoda burst out golden light, hanging above his head and spinning. Thousands of golden threads hung down from the pagoda, protecting it under the divine light. At the same time, a black light flashed in his hand, and a strange black banner the size of a palm was held by him. With a gentle swipe of his hand, light flickered on the surface of the banner, and a layer of strange black gas spread out. Within the black gas, violent figures roared crazily. If one looked carefully, one could clearly see that there were all kinds of monsters struggling violently on the banner. There were ordinary beasts, tigers, lions, cheetahs, elephants, but there were even more ferocious beasts that looked completely different from ordinary animals. Every one of them was extremely ferocious. This was the 10,000 Beast sect's most famous treasure, the 10,000 Beast banner. The figures within the banner were not living creatures, but spirit beasts that had fallen. The ferocious beasts' souls had been stripped away and bound within the banner. The ferocious beasts' souls had been refined using a strange, secret technique, causing their ferocious nature to increase greatly, completely stimulating the ferocious beasts within their bodies. Each of them looked ferocious and terrifying. A fierce aura rushed out. Although this secret method of refining the souls of beasts was too cruel and went against the laws of nature. Its power was so great that it could be said to be one of the foundations of the Wansho sect. Legend had it that the founder of the Wansho sect was the beast tamer Venerable. He held a Wansho banner in his hand. That banner was different from other banners. Its grade was higher than magic treasures, and it was a top-grade spirit treasure. There were 9 beast deities and tens of millions of ordinary beast souls in the banner. When it was unfolded, the whole world was enveloped by it, and thousands of beasts galloped, stepping through the sky. It was the treasure that made him famous. Therefore, when he was establishing the sect, he also passed down the refining method of the Wansho banner as the foundation of the sect. Generally speaking, this was the favorite magic treasure of many disciples in the Wansho sect. However, during the refining process, the materials needed were extremely precious. Moreover, one had to constantly search for beast souls. Take magic treasures, for example. In order to make the Wansho banner powerful, a large number of beast souls were needed. When it was a low-grade magic treasure, 10 beast souls were needed. To upgrade it to a middle-grade magic treasure, 100 beast souls were needed. To upgrade it to a high-grade magic treasure, 1,000 beast souls were needed. Only when it reached a high-grade magic treasure would the power of the Wansho banner be slightly revealed. It was comparable to some top-grade magic treasures. However, upgrading a magic treasure from a magic treasure was a hurdle. Not only did it have to reach 10,000 beast souls, but also had to find a beast deity to guard the banner as the main beast soul. As for the later stages, it was even more demanding. It could be said that the higher the level, the harsher the requirements were. At the same time, the power of the Wansho banner also became more powerful. It was a rare treasure to rely on, be it to kill enemies or defend oneself. It was just that the other requirements were too harsh. Therefore, even in the Wansho sect, there were not many who could refine it to a certain level. Although almost everyone had one, those who could cultivate it into a magic treasure could be counted on one hand. The banner in Xiao Yuan's hand was a magic treasure grade Wansho banner. Roar! Upon closer inspection, a terrifying beast the size of a small mountain could be seen roaring within the banner. Its body was like a snake mountain, and there were 9 heads on its enormous body. Each head was as large as a rock, and its eyes were like lanterns. They were green and filled with an ominous glint as they danced up and down. A fierce aura filled its body with an extremely domineering aura. With a loud roar, the 10,000 beasts that had been struggling and roaring suddenly became as fearful as cicadas in winter. They lowered their heads to the ground, setting off the boundless ferocity of the 9-headed snake. This 9-headed snake was the main beast soul of the banner, the beast deity. Clang, clang. The zither music changed again. It was incomparably urgent, and the sound turned into the sound of killing. The aura of iron and blood filled every inch of the ancient battlefield. In front of the battlefield's platform, 100,000 iron-blooded soldiers were lined up neatly. The blades of the weapons in their hands rippled with traces of cold light, and a strong smell of blood emanated from the blades. Bang, bang, bang. Rows of soldiers formed into square formations and quickly spread out in all directions. They charged in several directions, the heavy footsteps of the soldiers on the ground sounding like they were stomping on the hearts of the soldiers. The aura of killing grew stronger and stronger. Ambush from 10 sides had reached the chapter of ambush. On the ancient battlefield, Xiao Yuan and the others were all in a low-lying area of the battlefield. Although they did not personally witness it, the pressurizing and oppressive aura that came from the air made everyone understand that a storm was likely to come sweeping over with a whistling sound. Quick! Everyone follow Martial Uncle Zhao's instructions. Pour your inner energy into the pagoda. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda is a supreme treasure of our myriad beast sect. With it above our heads, ordinary attacks won't be able to penetrate its divine light. Yang Xian's face immediately changed and became rather ugly when he heard the miserable sounds of battle from the battlefield. Without even thinking about it, he immediately followed Xiao Yuan's instructions and poured his true essence into the tower. Immediately, the light from the tower expanded slightly and shone down, enveloping him as well. Under the cover of the divine light, Yang Xian couldn't help but inwardly sigh in relief when he realized that the murderous aura he'd been sensing on the ancient battlefield was isolated from the outside world. Yang Xian heaved a sigh of relief, but he quickly took out his own treasures. When the other cultivators saw this, they quickly poured their inner energy into the pagoda. At the same time, they did their best to gather their inner energy together. The pagoda's divine light grew even more resplendent with the aid of their inner energy. The aura it exuded was incomparably vigorous, as if it could support the heavens and support the earth for all eternity. And Tian sat on the floating cloud boat. At this time, they were already in the sky above the southern wilderness. He didn't continue to move. His mind was focused on the zither music. The scenes of the battles he'd experienced in the past constantly appeared in his mind. The murderous aura he possessed was constantly being poured into the zither music, allowing his mind to be closer to the artistic conception of the zither music. He integrated his own understanding of the murderous aura into the music. At the same time, his mind was constantly paying attention to the situation on the ancient battlefield. When he saw Xiao Yuan and the others holding the strange pagoda above their heads and urging the divine light to protect their bodies, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He was secretly surprised. He had witnessed the power of the pagoda with his own eyes. Even the formation map was cracked by it. It was absolutely terrifying. If nothing unexpected happened, it must be an extraordinary treasure. Want to hide in a turtle shell? Do you really think you can hide? Very well. I'll use you guys to test the power of my sound imitation. When Tian saw this, he no longer hesitated. The zither music in his hand became more and more hurried, completely displaying the scene of two armies fighting on the battlefield. In the ancient battlefield, the 100,000 troops were divided into 10 square formations. Under the leadership of their respective officers and soldiers, they turned in 10 directions and surrounded the low-lying land where the cultivators were. Kill! A crashing sound could be heard as countless figures appeared in front of the cultivators. Each and every one of them was clad in armor and wielded a sword or saber. Their bodies seethed with killing intent, and their faces were as cold as ice. Besieging from 10 sides, the murderous aura pervaded the whole air. Wave after wave, it seemed to directly drown the cultivators in the low-lying land. Kill, kill, kill. The sounds of killing reverberated in the air above the battlefield. There was only a brief pause before groups of soldiers began to march forward in an orderly manner. They were like 10 mad dragons, charging forward with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Bang, bang, bang. These soldiers rushed to kill. Their speed was very fast, but they strangely maintained the same shape. Their eyes were full of murderous intent, filled with coldness, and there was no trace of mercy. It was really like several huge tsunamis were rushing over. The soldier at the front was expressionless. He waved the battle sword in his hand and slashed at the endless divine light hanging down from the pagoda. When it landed on the divine light, countless terrifying sound blades whistled out from the battle sword like lightning and sharply bombarded the divine light. That sharpness, even the cultivators under the divine light, although they did not personally come into contact with that sharpness, already felt a chill on their necks. Their faces turned slightly pale. Then, the soldiers at the back rushed over, and countless swords and sabers madly slashed at the divine light. Whether it was the ancient battlefield or these iron-blooded soldiers, they were all formed by a kind of intent, by a kind of charm. What formed them were countless sound waves, formed by the power of sound waves. Every strike was filled with sharp and terrifying sound blades and endless sound waves. It shook the void. In a row, tens of thousands of attacks bombarded the pagoda at the same time. Suddenly, with the naked eye, one could see that the divine light falling from the pagoda was violently shaking, like flowing water, showing signs of distorting. The pagoda in the sky was also constantly shaking, violently trembling. At the same time, among the thousands of cultivators below the pagoda who were pouring their vital essence into it. Many of them looked as if their bodies had been struck by lightning. Their faces suddenly turned pale, and they spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their expressions suddenly changed, and they became extremely dispirited. The strength of each soldier was incomparably terrifying, not at all inferior to any nascent soul cultivator. The sound blades they released were comparable to nascent soul cultivators and were terrifyingly sharp. In an instant, no less than 10,000 soldiers brandished their weapons at the same time, bombarding the divine light. This force landed on the pagoda at the same time. Although the pagoda was amazing, it was not the kind of supreme treasure that was innately invincible when placed on top of one's head. The power used to activate it was even more heterogeneous and impure. This power immediately followed the pagoda and backfired on those cultivators. In an instant, more than half of the cultivators were mentally injured, and they spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Use magic treasures and spells to attack them. These soldiers are all formed from the sound of the zither. As long as we defeat them, they can still be killed. Xiao Yuan's expression was incomparably solemn. He suddenly unfurled the 10,000 beast banner in his hand. The originally small and strange banner grew with the wind. In the blink of an eye, it became incomparably huge, covering the sky and covering the sun. Roar! Within the banner, countless strands of black qi roiled, and the enormous body of the nine-headed snake shockingly appeared. The 9 ferocious heads danced wildly as they let out violent roars. Instantly, countless ferocious-looking beast souls with red eyes surged out of the banner like a tide. They exuded a ferocious aura and gave off a ferocious aura. They were ferocious and terrifying. They collided head-on with the soldiers on the spot. In an instant, it was as if 2 roaring waves had crashed into each other, and a terrifying roar erupted in an instant. These beast spirits had completely stimulated their bestial nature, becoming incomparably ferocious and ruthless. None of these beast spirits were below the core formation realm. Their sharp claws flashed with cold light as they pierced into the bodies of the soldiers, violently tearing the enemies in front of them into pieces. It was completely the return of their bestial nature. The soldiers that were torn to pieces by the galloping beasts didn't have a single trace of flesh left. They directly disintegrated into sharp sound blades that flew wantonly in all directions like a violent storm, slicing everything in front of them into countless pieces. The soldiers' weapons slashed at the beast spirits, and the sharp sound blades sliced them into countless pieces. Every move of theirs displayed the greatest destructive power in an instant. Direct and domineering, their killing intent was awe-inspiring. There was no doubt that they were the best soldiers in the world, the most powerful warriors. 50,000 of the 100,000 soldiers stood in front of the torrent of beasts. Like machines, they continuously swung their weapons, killing the beast spirits in front of them time and time again. The remaining 50,000 didn't stop and continued to violently bombard the pagoda. Fight out with them. They're just illusions. There's nothing to be afraid of. Ancestral Master, save us. For a moment, some of the other cultivators with strong wills displayed all kinds of attacks, magic treasures, spells, talismans, and madly threw them out. Some with weak wills were scared silly on the spot and stood in place on the verge of collapse. My beast spirits? When Xiao Yuan saw the galloping beast spirits falling in the battle with the soldiers, his face kept twitching, and he seemed to be in great pain. These beast spirits were painstakingly collected by him, and he couldn't help but feel the pain of watching them being killed one after another. These beast spirits couldn't be resurrected. Every time one died, there would be one less. All this time, he hadn't used them much and had been nurturing them in his body. When they were upgraded a few times and truly became a powerful magic treasure, he would take them out and rely on them to dominate. Boom, boom, boom. On the ancient battlefield, a long line of killing constantly changed. Countless sounds of killing intertwined to form a true melody of the battlefield. The two armies clashed in close combat, and the sound of weapons clashing resounded throughout the battlefield. It was a scene of life and death battle. It was incomparably tragic. The various scenes on the battlefield were completely outlined. Clang, clang, clang. Deschertien's zither music became more and more hurried, like a pipa playing the rain. The atmosphere and scenes of a great battle were completely presented. On the battlefield, countless soldiers launched sharp attacks to the sound of the zither. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of attacks once again bombarded the pagoda, and there was a continuous rumble. Saber light flashed like lightning, and the pagoda, which was already trembling violently, became incomparably dim with a flash of golden light. The divine light that covered thousands of cultivators suddenly shrank, and only a few dozen people around Xiaoyuan were covered. More than half of the cultivators were completely exposed. No matter how strong the pagoda was, it couldn't withstand the continuous bombardment. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 338. Not good. The divine light is gone, huh? Wind-splitting chaos blade technique. Let's fight it out with them. Following that, a loud explosion erupted. Countless violent forces swept out in an instant. At most, we'll just die. In front of these iron-blooded warriors condensed from intent, the pagoda's divine light retreated, and immediately, thousands of cultivators were directly exposed in front of the soldiers. Immediately, the soldiers stepped forward steadily, waving their weapons with cold eyes and coldly killing. Obviously, they were the most elite soldiers in the world. Anyone who blocked in front of them was an enemy, and enemies would be chopped into countless pieces. However, if they didn't explode in silence, they would die in silence. Even ants struggled to survive, let alone humans. Facing those cold-faced and murderous soldiers, as long as they were conscious, their eyes would emit a deranged look. In their hands, magic treasures, spells, whatever was powerful, they would use and madly attack the thousands of soldiers. Wind roar, earth crack. The sky was filled with ice, and the sky was overflowing with flames. Thunder rumbled. All kinds of terrifying scenes appeared in front of them, covering the sky and earth. The power that erupted in a desperate situation was very terrifying. Under the bombardment here, many soldiers in front were smashed into pieces and collapsed. But behind them, there were even more soldiers who unswervingly charged forward. Crack! Only to hear a fierce battle. Blood splattered everywhere, causing people to feel fear in their hearts. Unfortunately, facing these soldiers who didn't feel the slightest pain or fear and only knew to carry out orders and kill wholeheartedly, no screams could shake their killing intent. The cultivators' desperate counterattack was like a splash in a big river, only stirring up a small wave, and it was drowned in the blink of an eye. In just a moment, more than half of the thousands of cultivators died on the spot. The sound of the zither was like a storm, urging the killing on the ancient battlefield to become more and more tragic. The scenes of small battles and big battles appeared in front of them. Rumble. The pagoda continued to hover above Xiaoyuan's head, protecting the dozens of cultivators in the vicinity who were all of the nascent soul realm and above. These were all old monsters who had lived for countless years. Every one of them had a wealth of experience. Under the protection of the pagoda, they knew that as long as the divine light did not disappear, they would not be directly attacked. Therefore, they no longer defended. One by one, the flying swords scattered in all directions, splitting into countless sharp sword lights that covered the sky and covered the earth. One after another, powerful life-bound magic treasures launched attacks at the outside without regard for anything else. The fight was earth-shattering. However, the soldiers here were all comparable to nascent soul cultivators. As soon as they were crushed, they transformed into sound blades and sound waves that exploded with incredible power. On the other side, Xiao Yuan was controlling the 10,000 beast banner to pin down the 50,000 soldiers. Although the number of beast souls pouring out of the banner was large, they were not as powerful as the soldiers on the battlefield. They could only pin down the soldiers but could not gain the upper hand. They were in a stalemate. On the other side, tens of thousands of soldiers continued to attack them. They crashed into the divine light again and again, causing the pagoda to shake continuously. The divine light fluctuated violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. This was especially true for Xiao Yuan, who had been supporting the pagoda. Every time the pagoda shook, his face would turn a shade paler. Looking at him now, his face was deathly pale. Bang! A loud boom rang out. No matter how powerful Xiao Yuan was, he was only a body integration cultivator. He was far from being able to unleash the true power of the demon sealing pagoda. In fact, no one in the Thousand Beast sect had been able to refine the demon sealing pagoda. As long as one cultivated the Thousand Beast sect's cultivation method and understood the seals of the pagoda, they would be able to use it. However, how much power they could unleash depended on the user's cultivation. Now, the pagoda could be activated by a person's power and could withstand fierce attacks. However, even if the pagoda could withstand it, the person using the pagoda had to be able to withstand it. Every time the pagoda suffered an attack that could not be completely blocked, there would definitely be a backlash that would hit the user. It could be said that Xiao Yuan was enduring a terrifying backlash almost all the time. His power was limited after all. Even with the pagoda, he could not withstand the bombardment of tens of thousands of powerful soldiers. Finally, with a loud boom, the pagoda trembled violently. Xiao Yuan opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He could no longer control the demon sealing pagoda. The divine light that fell from the pagoda instantly collapsed and disappeared. Xiao Yuan had a bitter expression on his face. He glanced around. There were densely packed soldiers everywhere, blocking all the paths. They were like a small boat in the sea. They could capsize at any time. I didn't expect that there would be such a powerful monster in the small southern barbarian lands. I'm afraid this person is at least an ancient Monster King level monster. I was too careless. After all, the monster race was the most powerful race in the world in ancient times. I actually thought that the monster race had completely declined. This lesson is too big. No matter how far the monster race has declined, they can't be underestimated. A thought suddenly appeared in Xiao Yuan's mind, and he secretly blamed himself. However, a determined look suddenly appeared on his pale face. He reached out and patted his waist. Suddenly, a jade talisman appeared in his hand. He quietly looked at the jade talisman, and a wry smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Without hesitation, he squeezed it hard. Huh! The jade talisman was crushed on the spot. In an instant, a white light shot up into the sky from the broken jade talisman. However, it did not spread out, as if it was bound in a certain area by an invisible force. In the blink of an eye, the white light gathered and strangely condensed into a human figure. This figure was quite illusory. However, one could still see his face clearly. This was an old man with a head full of white hair and beard. He looked like a floating immortal. His appearance was very ordinary, but he exuded a formless aura of deterrence. This was a kind of majesty born from the power and strength that controlled the life and death of tens of thousands of people. The temperament of a superior. People did not even dare to look at his eyes. Eldest senior brother, save me. When Xiao Yuan saw this figure, his expression became unprecedentedly respectful. From his words, this person was his eldest senior brother. The old man's illusory figure turned slightly as he scanned his surroundings. His eyes revealed a hint of surprise, but he quickly regained his composure. He said calmly, I never thought that there would still be a Yao in this day, an age who knows this ability. The sound of a zither is filled with slaughter. It's a song of slaughter. It's no wonder that you and the Yao Sealing Pagoda have fallen into such a state. It was too reckless to act rashly against the monster race this time. The old man shook his head and said, "This is only a strand of my nascent spirit. All I can do is take you away." The old man did not seem to want to say more. He stretched out a finger and pointed lightly at the dim, Yao-ceiling pagoda. In an instant, the Yao-ceiling pagoda trembled and golden light shot up into the sky like a laser. The light was so bright that it spun around and returned to Xiao Yuan's head. The divine light swept up Xiao Yuan and the 10,000 beast banner not far away into the pagoda. Then, the pagoda soared into the sky and crashed into the restriction above the ancient battlefield. Rumble! Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled on the ancient battlefield, and the sound of killing shook the sky. No one knew how powerful the Yao-ceiling pagoda was, but it immediately smashed a crack in the void. The pagoda instantly passed through the crack, out of the ancient battlefield, and reappeared in the southern wilderness. The pagoda did not stop at all. With a golden light, like a meteor, it instantly escaped to the outskirts of the southern wilderness and quickly broke through the sky. Who is that person? When the Yao-ceiling pagoda broke through the sky, Di Shitian's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of surprise. No one knew better than him the power of the ancient battlefield transformed by the 10-sided ambush. If one wanted to break through the ancient battlefield, one would need to be far stronger than him, and also need to tear the space apart in an instant. The Yao-ceiling pagoda was naturally a great treasure, but what really attracted Di Shitian's attention was the illusory figure. It could be seen that it was simply a manifestation of a strand of nascent spirit. Even so, the faint pressure on his body gave him a sense of threat. Obviously, this person's true form was definitely a world-shaking expert. This trace of doubt only lasted for a moment, and was immediately buried in the bottom of his heart for the time being. The zither in his hand played hurriedly. Without Xiao Yuan, without the Yao-ceiling pagoda, everyone was exposed to the ancient battlefield, facing the overwhelming attack. In the blink of an eye, it was torn to pieces. Blood splattered on the ancient battlefield. Clang! When the last note of the zither fell, the 10-sided ambush did not play the third chapter. It was just that during the part of the great battle, there was no longer any living people standing on the battlefield, so naturally there was no need to continue playing. When the zither music stopped, suddenly, one could see that the ancient battlefield, which had been like a real existence, slowly began to become illusory and gradually dissipated. Withdraw. Di Shitian put 7 sins away and placed it in the demon mansion to be nurtured, allowing it to absorb the power of desire between heaven and earth on its own. At the same time, he quickly took out a small and delicate bag and patted it gently. Suddenly, a strong suction force emerged from the bag and instantly covered the entire ancient battlefield. Under the pull of this suction force, the magic weapons, magic treasures, and even the storage items on the battlefield were all sucked into the bag. The various items on the bodies of the cultivators who died on the ancient battlefield added up to a huge amount of wealth. Naturally, he could not let it go. Now was the time for the myriad Demon Valley to develop. So how could he let go of any chance to become stronger? What's the name of this song? At this time, Medusa, who had been standing quietly beside him, turned to look at Di Shitian. Her eyes flashed with an inexplicable light, and she suddenly opened her mouth to ask a question. There was a look of determination in her eyes, and it was obvious that she was determined to know the name of the song. Ambushed from all sides, Di Shitian smiled indifferently and put all the items into the storage bag. The ancient battlefield, which was completely condensed by the artistic conception, also disappeared mysteriously in the void with the zither sound. It was as if it had never appeared. Boom! At this moment, the entire southern wilderness trembled violently. After several fierce tremors, even the mountains were shaking. In an instant, the entire air seemed to have become unusually cold without warning. An inexplicable coldness swept through the mountains. It's the myriad Demon Valley. Di Shitian naturally felt this change in the first place. and he could not help but show a trace of indescribable surprise in his eyes. The tremor only lasted for a few breaths, and just like his sudden appearance, it disappeared without warning. His eyes fell on the myriad demon valley like two sharp arrows. Suddenly, he showed a hint of surprise and became a little inexplicable. It's the mysterious tomb in the valley. How could there be a change at this time? Feeling the cold air emitted in the air, D. Chertion instantly saw that this sudden change came from the myriad demon valley. In the valley, the mysterious tomb, which had been listed as a forbidden area by him and no demon was allowed to step into it, had a strange change. The tombstone, which had almost killed him before, suddenly became bigger, like an ancient sword, and directly soared into the sky. The cold air was emitted from it. The tombstone shook, and the entire southern wilderness shook violently. This shocking change did not last long. In the blink of an eye, the tombstone returned to its original size and stood in front of the tomb again, just like when he appeared. However, on the tombstone, the crystal cold light swallowed and spat. Countless mysterious talismans constantly emerged from the tombstone, shining with divine light and rushing into the void. Like locusts, they were densely packed and gathered together. In an instant, these talismans incredibly formed several ancient seal characters. Even if you have a peerless face, even if you are a peerless genius, even if you have lived forever, once the sky falls, the blood of billions of creatures. Celestial demon diagram. 9 ancient lamps. Blood altar. Demon summoning banner. Summoning ancestor. An ancient and mysterious ancient seal character mysteriously appeared in the sky above the southern wilderness. The formed characters seemed to have an inexplicable power. The moment one saw them, it was as if they were directly imprinted in one's heart. It was impossible to forget and directly rooted in the bottom of one's heart. It looked extremely strange. This is the mysterious inscription on the tombstone in the forbidden area of the Demon Valley. When D. Chertion saw this ancient seal character, the memory in the depths of his mind suddenly emerged. He had also seen the tombstone in the past and had a very deep impression of it. It could be said that he could not forget it even if he wanted to. Now that he saw it again, the memory of the past was once again evoked. He frowned slightly, and there was a hint of doubt between his eyebrows. However, it seems that there were no last few sentences back then. Could it be some kind of revelation? He remembered that back then, he only saw the first part of the tombstone. It only reached, once the sky falls, the blood of billions of creatures. That was it, but now there was an additional paragraph. Obviously, this was not shown on the tombstone. Moreover, this was probably the real key of the tombstone. Divinity and demon diagram. 9 ancient lamps. Blood altar. Demon summoning banner. These seem to be some ancient treasures. D. Chertion secretly began to figure out the meaning of it in his heart. The key 12 words seemed to be some ancient treasures or something. After all, it was easy to figure out their meaning from the words. What they represented were mysterious treasures. What on earth does this mean? Sakura secretly pondered, but the harvest he obtained was extremely little. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure out the key point. All along, he had been rather curious about the ancient tomb in the valley. With just a casual glance, he could see that there was something unusual about the ancient tomb. Even if it was a tomb, it was definitely not the tomb of an ordinary person. In addition, this inexplicable change made his curiosity rise infinitely. Speaking of which, the southern barbarian had always been quite mysterious in his heart. There was strangeness everywhere. Not only was there an ancient tomb in the valley, but there was also a mysterious ruin underground. The aura emitted from the ruins made D. Chertion not confident that he could enter it and escape unscathed. The 10,000 bones devouring tree in the withered bone wilderness, such an evil thing appeared here, and so on. Perhaps there were other mysterious things that he did not know about. None of these things should appear in such a remote and small place like the southern barbarian. If they should appear in those really famous places, but they all appeared here. This also shrouded the southern barbarian in D. Shurtian's heart with a layer of fog that could not be dispelled. That ancient seal, do you know anything about it? Medusa asked hesitantly. A trace of doubt could be seen on her face. The ancient seal in the air gradually dissipated and turned into countless mysterious talismans that hovered in the air. In the blink of an eye, they fell back into the tombstone like swallows returning to their nest. Let's go. If you don't understand now, you'll understand sooner or later. Shurtian did not express his opinion about the mysterious ancient seal. He changed the topic and said, "If I'm not wrong, now the other clansmen of the southern barbarian should be in my myriad demon valley. Why don't you come with me to the valley for a rest and meet Qin and the others?" There was a kind of invitation in his words. Shurtian had already thought it through along the way. Now, most of the demon clans on the entire purple gold continent had been miserably killed in this purge led by the immortal cultivation world. It could be said that there were not many demon clans left. For the entire demon clan, it was definitely an immeasurable heavy loss. It really hurt their vitality. Now, every demon clan was incomparably precious. Although the southern barbarian had suffered a great loss this time, it was still an opportunity to integrate. After all, in the myriad demon valley, almost all the demon clans in the southern barbarian gathered. They had lived with the subordinates in the valley for a full 5 years, and they would be quite familiar with each other. It gave them a sense of belonging. In addition to the power of the formation map, the power exerted could make the southern barbarian demons see the strength of the myriad demon valley. If they took advantage of this opportunity to extend an olive branch to most of the demon clans, it should not be difficult to let them enter the myriad demon valley. Medusa was a powerhouse in the southern barbarian. If she could live in the myriad demon valley, it would definitely be of great significance. Yes, Medusa did not think much about it. She immediately nodded and said, "It just so happens that I also want to see Sister She." The floating cloud boat quickly moved forward, rushing to the myriad demon valley. In the valley, Shi and the others all showed a thoughtful look. They looked at the void where the ancient seal had just appeared, full of contemplation. Naturally, they also saw the ancient seal and were trying to figure out the meaning of it. I wish everyone a good time on the 11th. Don't worry, the 11th will be updated as usual. Damn, the monthly votes have been doubled. I hope everyone has votes to help me. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 339. The God-Devil Diagram, the 9 Ancient Lamps, the Blood Altar, the Demon Summoning Banner. Chunshi lowered his head and pondered. These 4 sentences, each sentence contains a treasure. However, the diagram of the celestial demon seems to have appeared once in the ancient times. But what do the 9 ancient lamps and the blood altar mean? The demon summoning banner disappeared in ancient times. Among them, she was most familiar with the demon summoning banner. In fact, it was impossible for any old demon to forget it. In ancient times, the demon summoning banner was the most precious treasure of the demon clan. Legend had it that the demon summoning banner was not refined by the demon clan themselves. It was a natural spiritual treasure that had appeared among the demon clan in ancient times. It had incredible defensive capabilities, and as long as the difference in cultivation base wasn't too great, the difference between the heavens and the earth, it could block any attack. It was virtually invincible, almost like a turtle. If one wanted to attack, one could simply wave the banner and summon a beam of divine light called the soul-sucking divine light. If the divine light landed on one's body, one's soul would immediately be sucked away. With a light shake, one's soul would be destroyed. Of course, that wasn't its true function. The most marvelous aspect of the demon summoning banner was its ability to summon demons. In the golden age of the demon folk, any demon folk with status or power would imprint a bit of their nascent divinity into the banner as soon as they became demon kings. First, it was to prevent the demon folk from splitting up. Second, It was to provide the demon folk with a final layer of protection. As long as the nascent divinity imprint was fused into the demon summoning banner, it wouldn't be destroyed. Even if the demon folk encountered some sort of irreparable calamity in the outside world, the imprint would be protected by the banner and would not dissipate. In fact, it could absorb the vital energy of heaven and earth to strengthen the imprint. Then, it could be combined with the soul-summoning song and some other mysterious treasures. It could bring the dead back to life. Resurrection. Under the protection of the demon summoning banner, once the imprint was fused into the banner, it would become immortal. Unfortunately, such a thing had only happened a few times in ancient times. However, according to the rumors, every time one defied the heavens and changed their fate, heaven and earth would change color, ghosts would weep, gods would howl, the sun and moon would be reversed, heaven and earth would be reversed, and mountains and rivers would flow backward. It was extremely terrifying. The conditions required were extremely harsh. It required the consumption of countless treasures, and it seemed that it also required a certain treasure as a medium before it could be used. It could be said that the demon summoning banner was equivalent to the imperial dragon banner or imperial jade seal in the mortal world. It had an incomparably important significance. 9 ancient lamps? Chunshi thought to himself and said thoughtfully, this shouldn't be the name of a treasure. Could it be referring to the 9 ancient lamps? However, there weren't many famous lantern-type treasures. The most powerful ones were the treasured lotus lantern, Lihua lantern, and Heaven's Heart lantern. All of them were once controlled by peerless experts. If there are 9 of them, then it shouldn't be these 3. After all, the Dawn had access to the memories of Heavenly Daughter Many Flowers, and there were many things that even the old eccentrics didn't know about. However, she had a general idea of what was going on, and was very familiar with some of the secrets that she had access to. It only took a moment of thought for her to come up with answers. The memories of Heavenly Daughter Many Flowers were like an encyclopedia that could be easily accessed at any time. Even she couldn't figure it out, let alone the other demons in the valley. They were all at a loss and could only look puzzled. Wow, it turns out that Brother D's Myriad Demon Valley has such a mysterious ancient tablet. It's really powerful. Even the entire Southern Barbarian lands is shaking. I wonder what amazing treasure it is. Why don't we go and take a look? After the Black Ape King transformed, his face was filled with naivety. He looked like a simple-minded man with all brawn and brawn. He opened his mouth wide and took 2 deep breaths. He turned his head to look at the forbidden area in the valley and shouted in a low voice, "Please don't." As soon as the Black Ape King opened his mouth, the expressions of Chi Hua and the others immediately changed. They hurriedly stopped him and said, "That's the forbidden area in the valley that His Majesty personally set. There's a graveyard there. That's a tombstone. It has a very strong cold chi. At that time, even His Majesty would be frozen. It's very dangerous." After that, Bai Wei, Yuan Tian, and the others all stared at the Black Ape King vigilantly. It seemed that if he really wanted to enter the forbidden area, they would not hesitate to stop him. The red-crowned crane king frowned slightly. With the natural noble temperament of a heavenly crane, he said, "Black big guy, don't make trouble. Since Big Brother D set that place as a forbidden area, he must have his reasons. Besides, now that the cultivators outside the valley are either dead or have fled, Big Brother D should be back soon. If you want to go and take a look, you can tell him." No matter where it was, there was always a rule that whoever had the higher cultivation would have the status and qualifications. Although most of the people here knew that Di Shurtian's cultivation time was definitely lower than theirs, the Red-Crowned Crane King still did not have the slightest grudge and called him Big Brother. Clearly, this was also becoming his cultivation strength. Everyone, Di Shurtian came back too late and made everyone feel wronged. At this moment, the formation map that had been covering the entire valley in the sky suddenly disappeared into the void mysteriously, and there was no longer any abnormality. For a time, The myriad demon valley was released from the isolation and once again connected with the entire southern wilderness. The sky suddenly became much brighter. At the same time, two figures directly descended from the sky and landed in the valley while talking. They appeared in front of Chun-Shi and the other demons of the southern wilderness. It was Di-Shirtion and Medusa. Haha. When the Black Ape King saw this, his eyes lit up, and he quickly took a few steps forward with a silly smile on his face. His palm, which was the size of a praying mat, directly landed on Sakura's shoulder as he shouted in a booming voice, "Good brother, I, Old Black, am completely convinced by you. You actually got such a powerful and boundless formation without saying anything. Now, you're even more powerful. Just by playing some song, you instantly annihilated 4,000 to 5,000 of those D***M cultivators. You're too strong. I thought that I could at least tie with you this time, because I condensed my Niden. Now I don't dare to fight with you." Speaking of the scene of the Zither killing enemies, his neck could not help but shrink as if he felt a chill constantly hovering around his neck. Di-Shirtion smiled indifferently and did not show any complacency. He said calmly, "You're flattering me. Your magic power of pinching the sun and moon and reversing the universe is not inferior to any magic power. As the saying goes, everyone carries a beautiful sedan chair. No matter when, you can be confident, but you can never be arrogant. Big Brother D, this time I could be unscathed all because of the formation map you left behind. Otherwise, I'm afraid the entire southern wilderness will be killed by those cultivators. From now on, you're my big brother. Just call me Hero." The red-crowned crane king looked at Di-Shirtion and said very appropriately, but the trace of gratitude in her words could be clearly felt. The sincerity in her words could be heard. But when she spoke, her eyes glanced at Chun-Shi's face and saw the extremely unnatural and cold expression on her face. Her eyes did not fall on Di-Shirtion at all, as if he was a mass of air and was completely ignored. "There's a problem. There really is a problem." The red-crowned crane king's heart thumped. This time, it could be said that the guess in her heart was completely confirmed. Sometimes indifference and disregard meant that something unusual had definitely happened between the two. For a moment, the soul of gossip in the woman's heart began to burn. We're all from the southern wilderness. I still understand the principle that if the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. If one suffers, the other suffers. What's more, this is what I should do. There's nothing to thank me for." Di-Shirtion smiled indifferently and glanced around in front of him. He was secretly amazed. It had only been 5 years, but the changes were so great. The original demon kings of the southern wilderness had all condensed their inner cores at this time and truly transformed into demons. From their appearance after transformation, he already had an impression of who was who in his mind. This big black man with a simple and honest appearance was naturally the Black Ape King. The young girl in front of him was also recognized as the red-crowned crane king. After all, among the southern wilderness kings, only 2 were female. Other than Medusa, the other was the red-crowned crane king. On the side, there was another one wearing animal skin. His explosive muscles were coiled around his body like a dragon, exuding the demeanor of a king. Of course, he was not as good as Di-Shirtion. In the southern barbarians, there was no doubt that the only one with such temperament was the Golden Lion King, who was also known as the King of Beasts. As for the underworld Raven King, Di-Shirtion could not help but be secretly surprised. He was not surprised by his appearance after transformation, but that he did not transform at all. He was still in his original form of the underworld Raven and did not form a Tao body. Of course, the underworld Raven King was definitely a demon who had condensed an inner core. This was beyond doubt. The condensation of his aura could be clearly felt in his body. What was surprising was his choice. In fact, in this world, there was no rule that said that a demon must form a Tao body when they passed the transformation demon tribulation. Even if they did not form a Tao body, they could still condense an inner core. It was just that this kind of demon completely abandoned everything else and focused on cultivating the body. It was purer than ancient demon cultivators. In fact, there was not much difference. It was similar to cultivators and ascetics. Every time Di Shirtian saw someone, they would also nod in response. Although there was no long-winded or flowery speech, the trace of gratitude in their eyes could not be erased. When Di Shirtian saw this, he could not help but feel a burst of joy in his heart. He knew that his prearrangement really had the effect it should have. It was not difficult to win it over again. Chun-Shi. When he saw Chun-Shi, his expression was slightly unnatural. He had done something wrong to her, and he still felt that he could not face it normally. Actually, if it was Chun-Shi who hit or scolded him, Di Shirtian would also let go of some guilt in his heart. Instead, he would be able to face it naturally. However, it was this kind of action of not hitting or scolding and treating it as nothing that made him unable to advance or retreat. He was stuck in the middle like this, unable to advance or retreat. The feeling of being indebted was really unpleasant. Since you're back, then I should return to my 100-flower valley. Chun-Shi was silent for a while. There was no sound in the surroundings, but slowly, she raised her face that made 10,000 flowers lose their color. Her expression was very calm as she spoke calmly. After she finished speaking, her figure moved and was about to leave the valley. With a few light steps, she walked a few feet away. Sakura looked at the slightly thin back view, as if he saw endless misery. He stretched out his hand, wanting to stop her, but his lips opened and closed a few times, as if he had something to say. But he didn't know why. When the words reached the tip of his tongue, he couldn't say anything. That expression of wanting to say something but hesitating undoubtedly gave a look of 300 taels of silver here. Big brother. He felt the robe beside his leg being pulled, and a tender voice entered his ears. Di Shirtian looked back and carefully carried her up. It was Little White. Little White's eyes were unusually clear as she looked seriously into his eyes. She tilted her head and said, "Big brother, why did Big Sister She leave?" Little White likes Big Sister She. Can you go and get Big Sister back? Her eyes were filled with innocence as she looked at him with anticipation. Big brother D, although I don't know what exactly happened between you and Big Sister She, I know that many times, once you miss something, you won't have the chance to do it again. Big Sister, she has always been very tired. I also hope that she can find a pair of strong arms. The Red-Crowned Crane King took a deep breath and said slowly with a serious expression, "During this period of time, I've been by her side, but I've never seen her smile. Every time, she would stand alone by the waterfall." Di Shirtian listened quietly, but the expression on his face kept changing. He listened to the Red-Crowned Crane King slowly talk about the things that had happened in the valley over the past few years. Suddenly, a look of determination flashed in his eyes. He patted Little White's head lightly and put her down. He turned around and followed the direction that Chun-Shi had left in. His figure flashed, leaving behind a streak of golden light in the air as he left in an instant. He was obviously chasing after Chun-Shi. Listening to the Red-Crowned Crane King's narration of the past few years, it wasn't hard for him to tell that Chun-Shi had never been truly happy in these few years. He could only sigh inwardly and finally make up his mind. Fine, it's all because of me in the end. If I don't make up my mind, I'll be in trouble. What needs to be dealt with will be dealt with in the end. Running away wasn't in his character. Back then, he played the zither every day in front of the 100 Flowers Valley regardless of rain or shine. Firstly, Chun-Shi had indeed left a trace of an impression in his heart. He couldn't deny that he had been slightly moved. Secondly, it was reasonable for that matter to happen. As a man, he had no choice but to do that. Sometimes, feelings and responsibilities were mutual. Today, after 5 years, he had the responsibility to have a good talk with her alone. No matter what the result was, he had at least worked hard for it. Feelings, in Di Shirtian's heart, were a rather luxurious thing. It wasn't that he didn't want to capture a love that he could recall for the rest of his life. It was also his dream to have a good wife who could support him from behind and encourage him. But now, the situation in the Purple Gold continent had suddenly changed. All kinds of things had happened one after another. First, the demon clan was besieged by the immortal cultivation world. This was already enough to change the situation in the entire continent. Then, there was the matter of the Thousand Beast sect, which had always been a thorn in his throat. The Thousand Demon Valley needed to develop, and it had to start thinking of all ways to strengthen itself in the shortest time possible. All these things made it impossible for him to really waste his time on romance. I didn't expect Brother D to be together with Empress Qinshi. I was wondering why she would seem strange whenever I mention Brother D. I wonder if he can pluck the most beautiful flower of our southern barbarian lands. Under the Black Ape King's simple and honest face was a heart that was definitely not simple and honest. Oomph. The red-crowned crane king rolled its eyes at him and snorted lightly. Whether or not he can bring Sister She back depends on whether Brother D has the ability. By the way, Black Guy, now that the formation has been removed, those immortal cultivators in the southern barbarian lands have either died or fled. Don't you want to go back to your stupid Ape Valley? Let me tell you, I'm not leaving this time. The Black Ape King let out a few strange chuckles. His eyes were no longer simple and honest. Instead, they were filled with light. With a turn of his hand, he took out a heavy gourd. He opened the gourd and immediately, the aroma of wine wafted into his face. He poured a few mouthfuls into his mouth and revealed an expression of enjoyment. During these days in the valley, I finally understand how Brother D and the others can cultivate so quickly. Even the spiritual wine is brewed pool by pool. They drink spiritual wine every day when they cultivate. Even those juniors who have just been born with spirituality can enjoy it. I don't want to leave such days. Anyway, I've decided. Gulp. He poured a big mouthful of spiritual wine into his mouth and said happily, I won't go anywhere in the future. I'll stay here. The spiritual energy here is rich, and there's such a powerful treasure like the formation. I won't leave even if you chase me away. Little crane, haven't you noticed? Ever since Brother D appeared, every breakthrough is like divine help. It's unbelievably fast. I have a feeling that as long as I follow him, the days in the future will definitely be very exciting. His eyes flashed with wisps of light, but it was instantly restrained under that simple and honest face. Who would have thought that under this face there was a pair of extremely sharp eyes? The red-crowned crane king did not speak, but it was deep in thought. Caw! At this time, the underworld crow king flapped its wings and flew high, leaving the myriad demon valley with a huge flock of crows behind it without hesitation. For them, only the withered bone wasteland and the myriad bone-devouring tree were their best shelter. The golden lion king pondered for a moment and left as well. In the sea of flowers, a cool breeze blew, rippling out boundless waves. The petals danced, dancing together with the butterflies. It was incomparably gorgeous. Waves of floral fragrance entered one's heart and blended together with 100 different tastes. It was even more bizarre, and those who smelled it could not help but be intoxicated by it. Beautiful. It would be difficult to find such an indescribably beautiful scenery in the world. Pata! A golden divine light flashed, and D-Shirton landed lightly on the ground. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 340. Looking at the familiar scene in front of him, D-Shirton couldn't help but have complicated thoughts. Next to him was the Zither Sound Villa that he had built himself 5 years ago. He looked at the hundreds of exotic flowers around him. Here, the 4 seasons didn't change at all. No matter what kind of flowers they were all extremely beautiful. The sweet fragrance of the flowers gently filled the air. Phew! He casually sized up his surroundings and looked at the valley. He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the inexplicable anxiety in his heart. A determined expression appeared on his face. Back then, after he broke Chincy's body at Tiger Hill, there was an indescribable and strange connection between him and Chincy. They could sense each other. Through this connection, He clearly knew that she was in the valley. If he didn't make up his mind, he would be in trouble. He secretly strengthened his confidence in himself. Without any hesitation, he lifted his feet and walked into the valley. The inside of the valley was a world that completely belonged to flowers. It was a sea of flowers. Countless kinds of strange flowers grew everywhere. The essence of flowers spread in all directions, filling every inch of space in the valley. On the ground, delicate and beautiful petals covered the ground, covering even the original color of the ground. It was so thick that it felt soft when one stepped on it. These immortal cultivators are too lawless. Sakura casually looked around the valley and couldn't help but show a layer of anger between his eyebrows. His impression of most of the immortal cultivators directly dropped to the freezing point. Originally, the beauty of the scenery in the Hundred Flowers Valley could be said to be the best in the Southern Barbarian. Even if Sakura was extremely confident in the Myriad Demon Valley, he still had to admit that it was indeed inferior to the Hundred Flowers Valley in terms of scenery. But now, although all kinds of flowers in the Hundred Flowers Valley were still there, some ancient trees that used to grow here had been cut down. The courtyard where Chunshi lived had been blown into countless pieces. The lotus pavilion on the lake in the valley had even been removed. Many of the lotus flowers that grew in the lake were rare spiritual essences, and they had all been plucked away. It made the Hundred Flowers Valley feel depressed. However, this anger was only temporarily suppressed because he had already seen Chunshi's figure. She was standing in the roofless pavilion with her back to him. Looking at her back, there seemed to be an indescribable sadness and loneliness. Chunshi Dishirtian slowly walked over and came to Chunshi's side. He looked at the faint lake under his feet and was silent for a while, as if he didn't know what to say. After a long time, he said with a kind of tenderness, "Come back to the Myriad Demon Valley with me." Chunshi was silent. There was no emotion on her face at all. She held a peony in her left hand and gently plucked petals from it with her right hand, throwing them into the water naturally. When Dishirtian spoke, her jade-like hand unconsciously trembled slightly and then returned to normal, as if it had never appeared. Sakura didn't notice it either, but he knew that what he needed to do was to say the words in his heart. Once he said it, no matter what kind of result he got in the end, at least there wouldn't be any regrets in his heart. Although he didn't really have it, at least he had tried hard to fight for it. He had a blood feud that had not been avenged, and he was full of unfulfilled ambitions. It was impossible for love to occupy too much of his life. Now, nearly 10,000 cultivators in the southern barbarian land have died directly or indirectly in my hands, and only a few have escaped. It seems that we have won a great victory and fought back. However, I am sure that those sects in the cultivation world will absolutely launch an encirclement against us again. At that time, it will be thunderous. Although the Hundred Flowers Valley is good, it is not protected by the formation like the Myriad Demon Valley. If there is an accident, it will be very dangerous. Dishirtian's plain words contained a touch of tenderness. In the heart of a man of iron, there was also tenderness. Naturally, he was no exception. He didn't directly talk about the things between them, but he also expressed his own meaning in his words. That was, go back together. If she accepted it, there might be a future between them. If she didn't accept it, then he was sure that Chunshi had never forgiven him for what happened in the past. My life and death don't need you to care. Chunshi's hand that was throwing the flowers stopped silently. She opened her cherry lips slightly and spat out a sentence as if she was facing a stranger. Her eyes never looked at Dishirtian, not even once. How is it none of my business? When Dishirtian heard it, there was an inexplicable anger in his heart. He raised his eyebrows, and the overbearingness between his eyebrows suddenly rose. He took a deep breath, and regardless of anything else, he said decisively, I admit that everything that happened in the past was my fault. If possible, I would like to be able to reverse time and change what happened in the past so that it would no longer bring you harm. Yes, I can't deny that my heart has indeed been moved by you. If possible, I also hope that when I have the power to pursue you, I can express my love for you. We can be like ordinary people and have a beautiful love. It could be the best memory of my life. However, there is no medicine for regret in this world, and I don't have that kind of great magic that can reverse time and space. Things have already happened. What I can do is to try my best to make up for the mistakes of the past. I also hope that I can take good care of you in the days to come. You can hit me, scold me, or even kill me. As long as I do what I want to do, I can still give you a chance. Chunshi. The love game is really a luxury for me now. In one breath, he said almost everything that he wanted to say in his heart. After that, he exhaled heavily, looked up at the void, and sighed with self-mockery. Perhaps my life is destined to be lonely. Perhaps love is really too far away from me. His thoughts gradually drifted away, and he inexplicably recalled the last scene of his previous life. He was betrayed by his family. Coupled with the matter of Chen Shi, he could not help but feel a trace of loneliness in his heart. He said in a low voice, "Forget it. After all, it was my own fault. I have no right to force you to love me and have feelings for me. Since you don't want to go back to the Myriad Demon Valley with me, I will go back. I will go back and get the formation map to protect the Hundred Flowers Valley." Tian could not help but show a trace of bitterness at the corner of his mouth. Before coming, he had a lot of words in his heart that he wanted to say. Thanks to the blessing of his previous life, he remembered a lot of tender and sweet words of love. He originally planned to come and coax her, hoping that there would be some progress between them. However, for some reason, he could not say a single word of these words in his mind. But what he said was the above. You reap what you sow. He had planted a bitter gourd, and now he had to swallow it no matter how bitter it was. Patter. She stood silently in the pavilion for a long time. Seeing that Chunshi did not seem to want to say anything at all, she no longer had any extravagant hopes and turned to walk out of the valley. Her footsteps were very heavy, making muffled sounds on the ground. However, she did not know that Chunshi looked cold on the surface, but his heart was turbulent. Indeed, what Tian said was not tender and affectionate words of love, but it was the truest words in his heart and also the truest side. For a long time, she had always been brooding about what happened back then and could not let it go. On the surface, she did not care, but in her heart, she had never forgotten it. Now, hearing Tian's heartfelt words, for some reason, the resentment in her heart seemed to dissipate a lot. In her mind, scenes related to him unconsciously appeared. Every morning, regardless of rain or shine, he insisted on apologizing with a zither outside the valley. When the southern barbarian was in danger, he even asked his subordinates to be the first to find her. The heroic song that she heard back then. Wait, these scenes seemed to have left traces in his heart long ago without him realizing it. Hearing Sakura's last words that were filled with desolation, Chunshi's heart inexplicably felt a trace of heartache. When this feeling emerged, a thought couldn't help but emerge in her mind. Could it be that I have really left his shadow in my heart? Why do I feel sad when I hear those words? As soon as this thought emerged, she was immediately shocked. She shook her head repeatedly and denied it secretly. No, it's definitely not like that. Thoughts quickly turned in her mind, but she could not help but say suddenly, "You don't have to bring the formation map here." You! Tian's body trembled. Then he turned around, looked at Chunshi in surprise, and said one word expectantly. Before he could continue, he had been interrupted by Chunshi. Don't misunderstand. The formation map is already the only thing that the Southern Barbarian can rely on. If I really let you put it here, wouldn't I personally push the Southern Barbarian Demon Clan into the abyss? Chunshi turned around indifferently and looked at Tian, with a trace of complexity between his eyebrows. However, it's not impossible for me to forgive you and even marry you. In his voice, there was a trace of helplessness and a trace of imperceptible shyness. Say it. Tian heard and said without hesitation. He was very decisive, without a trace of hesitation. He thought to himself, as long as I can forgive you, even if I have to climb a mountain or dive into a sea of fire, I will do it. First, within 500 years, You must reach the realm of the big ancient demon. Chun-Shi muttered a condition that could be said to be quite crazy. No matter who heard it, if they heard it, their expression would change greatly in an instant, and their heart would be gloomy. Big ancient demon, this was not something that could be achieved by just anyone. To be honest, Di Shirtian's first transformation monster core could be said to be considered a demon, and to become a demon king, he had to cross 3 levels, directly to the 4th transformation monster core, and then go through another 3 levels. To become a great ancient demon, he had to have a 7 transformation monster core. From the 1st transformation to the 7th transformation, there were a total of 6 levels. After condensing the inner core, it was extremely difficult to take a step forward. Every step was equivalent to adding up all the previous hardships, and it required a lot of effort and a lot of time. It was impossible to be like before, where one could continuously rely on some spirit wine to help speed up one's cultivation. For an ordinary demon, just from the 1st transformation to the 2nd transformation, it would probably take 500 to 600 years, not to mention the later stages, which would be even more difficult to cultivate. To step into the big ancient demon realm from a realm that was not even a demon king, in just 500 years, was simply the most ridiculous thing in the world. The big ancient demon was a supreme being that could move unhindered in the purple gold mainland, and even those immortals who had ascended could be easily killed. It was incomparably powerful. How could it be achieved in such a short time? All right, I agree. A confident look appeared on Di Shirtian's face, and his aura made him seem even more majestic, like an emperor. He nodded without hesitation and said, "In less than 500 years, I will definitely be able to step into the big ancient demon realm." Although he was a little confused about the purpose of Chun-Shi's condition, no matter how difficult it was, he did not care. He was completely confident that he could fulfill his promise within the time limit. In fact, if he was really allowed to cultivate in the purple gold mainland, it was almost impossible for him to reach the big ancient demon realm in 500 years, no matter how high his talent was or how strong his luck was. However, he was still full of confidence. The source of his confidence was none other than the treasure that heavenly demon Ziyu brought out from the heavenly demon secret realm, the exquisite creation pagoda. The first level of the pagoda had a 10-fold reversal of time. 1 year outside was equivalent to 10 years in the pagoda. 500 years outside was equivalent to 5,000 years in the pagoda. 5,000 years might still be difficult for other demon clans to reach the big ancient demon realm, but one should not forget that Di Shirtian had an amazing book, The Emperor Shocking the World. In addition, there are all kinds of spiritual essences in the secret realm, large amounts of resources, various miraculous spiritual wines in the wine god's treasure mirror, and his own heavenly demon abode that could absorb the endless power of desire between heaven and earth at the same time, etc. With all these factors added together, if he was not confident, then he could be called a wooden club. Chun-Shi saw Di Shirtian's confident expression, and a glint flashed across his eyes. However, he did not care too much about why he was so confident, and he spoke of his second condition. "Second, if you want to marry me, you have to personally propose to my mother." Suddenly, Chun-Shi threw out another shocking sentence. Of course, Di Shirtian frowned slightly, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Where is mother-in-law?" There was a puzzled expression on his face. She mused inwardly. "I have never heard that Chinsi has a Yangqin. She is not born and raised by the heaven. She is not a supreme exotic flower that was born naturally. All along, it is impossible for 2 momentary youth flowers to appear at the same time in the same era." What was going on? He could not help but be puzzled. It was really surprising. He had never heard that Chun-Shi had a family. In ancient times, the Purple Gold Land was the original world of the 10,000 worlds, and it was also the central world. The rest of the worlds were born around this land. However, in ancient times, there was a great power that used boundless spiritual power and their own lives as a medium to open up the chaos, evolving 2 worlds on the Purple Gold Land. One is the Heaven Realm, The other is the demon realm. The two worlds rely on the original land to exist, and they're the worlds closest to the purple gold land among the 10,000 worlds. They're closely connected and together with the underground world that has existed since ancient times, the underworld that exists under the purple gold land. They are called the three realms. Chun-Shi opened her mouth to reveal a secret. The heaven realm is a place where human cultivators can ascend on their own after they have achieved success in their cultivation. However, the demon realm is a place where the demon race lives. My mother is in the demon realm. There are still demon clans in the demon realm? Tion said with some surprise. Naturally, since Chun-Shi opened his mouth, he did not intend to stop halfway. A trace of sadness suddenly flashed in his eyes, and he said indifferently, "The heaven realm, the demon realm, and the underworld are all connected to the original land. However, in the past, because of the human clan, the demon clan was forced to close the passage between the demon realm and the mainland and seal it, so that the mainland and the demon realm can no longer be connected." Tion secretly pondered. He also understood the meaning of Chun-Shi's words. If what Chun-Shi said was true, and his mother was in the demon realm, then if he wanted to ask for her hand in marriage, he would undoubtedly have to go to the demon realm. Now, the passage to the demon realm was sealed. If he wanted to go, he would inevitably face the problem of how to open the passage. This was not an easy thing to do compared to the first thing. Fortunately, Chun-Shi did not mention a third condition. Although Chun-Shi's attitude was not close, he still agreed to return to the myriad demon valley together. Phew! In this regard, Tion was not disappointed. Instead, he was overjoyed. The most difficult first step has finally been taken. As long as we return to the myriad demon valley and work hard, one day there will be a harvest season. He did not mind. When he returned, he did not use any escape light. He just strolled in the mountains and talked to her as he walked. Tion knew the principle of more haste, less speed. He did not mention anything about emotional matters. He talked about his experience in the heavenly demon secret realm in the past 5 years. Misty Wave Lake, Misty Wave Island, and all kinds of incredible scenes he had witnessed in the heavenly demon secret realm. There were nearly 1 million descendants of the demon clan in the secret realm, and even the tragic battle on Wenshin Road, Wenshin Hall, and the heavenly Inyang Bridge in the test. Then, he went to the treasure house and the exquisite pagoda. Although some of the things that could not be said were concealed, most of the experiences were told to Chun-Shi. In his words, he did not treat her as an outsider. Instead, she was his most intimate existence. In fact, Tion did not mean to hide it. Some things could not be hidden at all. The exquisite pagoda could be said to be the most heaven-defying treasure for the development of the early stage. It was impossible for the demon clans under the myriad demon valley to not enter and cultivate. This secret was naturally no longer a secret. Now that the secret realm was stored in the pagoda, the nearly 1 million demons in the secret realm could not be given up. That was the most precious treasure. These things, at least in the southern barbarian land, could not be hidden. Therefore, he didn't hide much from Chun-Shi and told her everything openly. His unreserved trust could deepen her impression of him, and even make her have a good impression of him. Why wouldn't he do it? Although Chun-Shi did not speak, when he spoke, her ears naturally listened attentively. When she heard the thrilling part, it was not difficult to find that even her mood was somewhat fluctuating. After listening, she was completely speechless about Tion's luck. A strange lamp appeared in the Huang Quan River, which can devour thousands of souls. This power, I'm afraid it's the birth of a primordial spirit treasure that has never been seen before. Chun-Shi said thoughtfully, "If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading." Chapter 341. Every single natural spirit treasure was born by the heavens and the earth. Every single one of them contained a unique and miraculous aura of the Tao, and they all had their own functions. They wouldn't appear for no reason, and they were usually born from the karmic luck of the heavens and the earth. When they were born, there would be a heaven-shaking omen that could be identified with a single glance. They were definitely not something that treasures and spirit treasures refined from precious materials could compare to. Furthermore, according to the ancient records, the birth of every pre-world spirit treasure was a sign that the person who was destined to be with it had already appeared. When these pre-world spirit treasures appeared, if they were not restrained by a great divine ability and were forcibly seized, they would break open the void in search for their destined owner by following that faint trace of connection. They would accompany them and protect them as they matured. During the process of protection, these pre-world spirit treasures would often lose their luster and become no different from ordinary scrap metal. Only those who were destined to possess them would be able to discover the uniqueness of these pre-world spirit treasures and unleash their powers. When the owner could truly possess these pre-world spirit treasures and unleash their powers, they would be able to unleash their powers to their limits. Only then would they truly recognize a master and shine with unprecedented brilliance. I wonder who in the world has the luck to have a connate spirit treasure like this. If they don't die prematurely, they'll definitely become a powerhouse in the future. They'll even have a chance to become a peerless powerhouse if they comprehend the Tao rhythms within the spirit treasures. It's a pity that this kind of opportunity is hard to come by. It's already a great fortune for me to be able to obtain the legacy of the goddess of 100 flowers. Although she was very surprised by the birth of connate spirit treasures, he was not greedy. Every connate spirit treasure was born out of luck. Generally speaking, it was very difficult to force one to possess a connate spirit treasure unless one could find the master of the connate spirit treasure and kill them completely. Only then would one have a chance to possess a connate spirit treasure. After all, the birth of a connate spirit treasure to choose a master was a matter of luck. If the destined master died prematurely, it would mean that the karmic luck was not with them. There was no way they could possess them. Exquisite fortune pagoda? I have an impression of it in my memory. As Chun-Shi listened to Di Shi-Tian's experiences, his heart was already in turmoil. The more he knew, the more complicated his gaze became when he looked at Di Shi-Tian. It was difficult to describe the waves in his heart. Besides the innate spiritual treasure, the thing that caught her attention the most was the exquisite creation pagoda. She had inherited everything about Goddess Many Flowers, so she had a very deep impression of the pagoda, especially the fact that it could reverse time and space. It was a heaven-defying spirit treasure. As long as it was possible, he could use it to create batches of powerhouses. Just as you said, there are millions of descendants of the demon race in the heavenly demon mystic realm. Most of them are in the realm of demon beasts. However, due to the rules of the mystic realm, they are unable to break through and become demons. If you can subdue this group of clansmen, you can establish a powerful demon force in a very short time. Chun-Shi's eyes flickered and wisps of wisdom emerged. Since she decided to return to the myriad demon valley with Di Shi-Tian, although she had said that it was a condition, she had accepted it subtly in her heart. However, she knew that if she wanted to become his wife, she did not have the strength of a great demon. It would eventually bring about an unexpected disaster. However, when she learned that Di Shi-Tian had the exquisite creation pagoda, she immediately understood that it would not be difficult for him to reach the great demon realm in 500 years. She secretly changed her identity in her heart and began to think for Di Shi-Tian. However, the number of clansmen is too large, and their overall strength is incomparably strong. They are only limited by the mystic realm. Once they leave the mystic realm, a large number of clansmen will quickly break through and condense Niden. Therefore, in my opinion, before letting them out, you must subdue them first. Only then can they truly become your force and strengthen yourself. Chen, she said calmly. Whether it was her tone or her behavior, there was a slight change. This change naturally could not be hidden from Di Shi-Tian. He could not help but feel a burst of joy in his heart. This was a good start. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he said, "Of course. Although the demons in the mystic realm are also clansmen, if they can't submit to me, what's the use of letting them out? Between his eyebrows, there was a trace of dominance. The longer he cultivated the book of the Emperor shocking the world, the more obvious the temperament in his body was nourished. His idea was to break free from all restraints, to be above heaven and earth, and to be the only one. This kind of momentum was most likely to appear in an emperor. An emperor was the kind of person who would prosper if he obeyed and die if he resisted. On the Wenxin road, he was compassionate, but his compassion was not overflowing. His compassion was only for his loyal subordinates. As for the demon race in the secret realm, he naturally would not give up. With Ziyu leading the way, he was extremely confident that he could successfully subdue nearly 1 million demon race members. Immortal cultivators can establish sects and families. Then I will establish a kingdom of demons. Let's see if your sects are stronger, or if my kingdom of demons is stronger. Today, the immortal cultivators' sects are above me. Sooner or later, I will pull them down and trample them under my feet. I will also experience the feeling of being bullied and slaughtered. Tian raised his eyebrows, and the mysterious purple king mark on his forehead flickered violently a few times. A natural domineering aura rose, and in his eyes there was a kind of resolute determination to kill. As he walked, he chatted with Chunxi. Along the way, Tian did not hide anything that could be said in order to deepen the feelings between him and Chunxi. He hoped that they could slowly cultivate their feelings for each other. Indeed, this was the case. Although she had always listened more than she spoke, her resistance and indifference had been reduced after all. Of course, he did not mention a word about his own secrets. After all, there were some things that could not be revealed, even to the people closest to him. With the experience of his previous life, he deeply understood one thing, and that was no matter what, he had to keep a few trump cards for himself. These trump cards could not be revealed to anyone. Perhaps, at a critical moment, the trump cards that could really be used to save his life were these trump cards that only he knew. Although the journey from the 100 Flowers Valley to the Myriad Demon Valley was not short, and they were strolling leisurely, there was an end to the road. After walking for a long time, they looked at the sky and saw that the sun was already setting in the west. Dusk began to fall. The Myriad Demon Valley was already in front of them. They entered the valley with ease. In the valley, most of the southern barbarian demons who had hidden in the valley 5 years ago did not leave. Only a small part of them had left. It seemed that those who stayed did not intend to leave again. Ah, Brother D, Lord Chunxi, you're finally back. As soon as they entered the valley, a loud voice rang out like thunder. The Black Ape King grinned and glanced back and forth between Tian and Chunxi with an inexplicable charm. When Sakura saw this, he didn't find it strange. As early as a few years ago, he had already seen that this fellow, the Black Ape King, despite his simple and honest appearance, was actually not stupid at all. Instead, he was very shrewd. Seeing that he was still in the valley, he could not help but be moved. He smiled faintly and said, "Old Black, now that all the cultivators in the southern barbarian lands are gone, why didn't you go back to your nest?" When the Black Ape King heard this, he said with a simple and honest face, "Brother D, to tell you the truth, my lousy place has long been plundered by those cultivators. I'm used to living here. Why don't you take me in?" As he spoke, he seemed to want to prove something. His fist heavily pounded on his chest a few times, making a muffled sound. He shouted, "Don't worry, I don't have anything else, but I do have a bit of strength. My strength can be considered passable. I'm just afraid that if you agree, I'll follow you in the future and do whatever you say. You can't not take me in." At the end of his speech, his eyes revealed a pitiful look, as if he had no home to return to. His expression seemed to say that he would stay here and not leave in the future. Hearing this, Tian's eyes flashed. He reached out and patted the Black Ape King on the shoulder. He said with a hint of joy, "Brother Black, if you can stay and help me, how can I not agree? However, in the Myriad Demon Valley, I'm afraid you will be subject to some rules. After all, the demon clan in the valley can't be left alone. He had come back. At this time, the plan in his mind had begun to be implemented. He would really integrate the entire Myriad Demon Valley and completely build it like an iron bucket. As the saying goes, nothing can be accomplished without rules. In the integration, the first thing to do was to set up rules on how to integrate and strengthen the Myriad Demon Valley. He had a complete plan long ago. After obtaining the Heavenly Demon Secret Realm, he had all the things he needed for development. When the Black Ape King heard this, he did not hesitate at all. He said in a muffled voice, "I know this. Anyway, I don't plan to leave. There is wine and meat here. I won't leave even if you beat me to death. You could do whatever you want. Anyway, I just want to drink wine every day." Speaking of wine, he opened his mouth and almost drooled. Tion smiled faintly and said, "Since Brother Black is sincere in staying, I will not treat you unfairly. In the future, you will be an elder in the valley. If you want to drink wine, you can get it from Tion." He looked over and saw the Red-Crowned Crane King and Chun-Shi whispering to each other. From time to time, the Crane King would look in his direction. "Chihua, Baiwe, the five of you quickly come to this king's cave residence." Tion took a deep breath and naturally exuded a king's aura that made people not dare to look at him directly. He said in a deep voice. Then, he told Chun-Shi and strode to the cave residence that he had not seen for 5 years. Behind him, the Black Ape King and the Red-Crowned Crane King also followed. "Yes, King." The moment Tian's voice fell, 5 respectful voices answered directly. Chihua and the others also answered and immediately rushed to the cave residence. Standing in front of the cave residence, with a quick glance, all the places were spotless. Obviously, it was carefully cleaned every day. In fact, this cave was casually opened by him, and he didn't take care of it. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was simple and crude, but there wasn't anything worth paying attention to. As he walked in, a white shadow pounced on him. When Tian saw it, the light in the corner of his eyes became much gentler. He smiled faintly and stretched out his hand, holding the white shadow in his arms naturally. The white shadow turned a few times and found a comfortable position in his arms to lie down. She said in a tender voice, "Brother, why are you only back now?" The white shadow was obviously Xiaobai. She shouted happily and looked around. When she saw Chun-Shi beside her, she was even more delighted. She directly jumped out of Tian's arms and pounced on her. Chun-Shi also naturally hugged her. "Sister Shi, don't leave in the future, okay? Xiaobai doesn't want you to leave." Xiaobai's pure words were filled with sincere feelings. There was a strong sense of reluctance. When Chun-Shi heard this, she rolled her eyes at Tian and said softly, "Sister also can't bear to part with you." "Okay, Sister promises you I won't leave in the future." Whoosh! A clear sound of something breaking through the air came from behind. Zhu had already landed on Chenxi's shoulder. Her eyes were filled with joy as she shouted, "That's great, elder sister. Have you really decided not to leave in the future?" The excitement in the vermilion bird's eyes did not contain a trace of impurity. She had thoroughly fallen in love with this place. She had a playful personality to begin with, and the cold and cheerless life in the 100-Flower Valley had bored her to death. On the contrary, in the past 5 years in the valley, playing with Little White and the tens of thousands of Yao in the valley had made her happier than she had ever been. How could she bear to leave and return to that cold and cheerless valley? Now that she heard Chun-Shi say that she would not leave in the future, the joy in her heart could not be concealed. She was the happiest one. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, a few figures rushed in from outside the cave. Upon closer inspection, the leader was a fireball that looked like a ball of flames. It was Chihua, followed by Baiyu and the others. They were Tian's 5 most loyal subordinates who had been following him since Tiger Hill. "My king." The moment they saw Tian, they all lowered their heads. The trace of respect that came from the bottom of their hearts was not concealed at all. Their loyalty had never wavered in the past 5 years. "Yes, come in with me." Entering the cave, The cave was squeezed by Sakura's huge demon body when he broke through back then, causing the space inside to become like a plaza. It was very wide and the ground was flat. There weren't too many items inside. There was a stone bed, a jade table, and some ordinary furniture like tea sets and wine utensils that were arranged in the surroundings. Indra walked into the room and came to the front of the stone bed. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Chun-Shi's jade-like hand. When Chun-Shi saw this, she couldn't help but frown slightly. She resisted and wanted to move her hand away. However, she seemed to have made a decision. Her jade-like hand only moved slightly and didn't make any other movements. They walked to the stone bed together and sat down side by side. The Black Ape King and the Red-Crowned Crane King stood aside and didn't say much. In front of them, Chi-Hua and the other 5 stood respectfully in front of Di Shirtian and Chun-Shi. Sakura glanced at them, nodded, and said, "Chi-Hua, you did a good job in the Southern Barbarians' calamity this time. You were able to open the array in time and protect the entire Southern Barbarian monster tribe. You have made great contributions. You will be rewarded and your mistakes will be investigated. This has always been my rule. I know what you have done in these years. I will reward you according to your merits later. To be in charge of a force and make his subordinates loyal, rewards and punishments must be clear. Only with rewards and punishments could he get the loyal support of his subordinates. He was already familiar with this since a long time ago, and his body was filled with a dignified aura. His gaze swept through the surroundings before he said, "Before that, Chi-Hua, tell me about the current situation in the gorge." "Yes, Your Majesty." Chi-Hua took a step forward and said respectfully, "Your Majesty has left instructions in the valley. The spiritual wine brewed by Yuan Tian nourishes the descendants of the tribe every day. In the past 5 years, the number of people who have been born with spirituality has increased greatly. There are already 13,650 people in total. Among them, 5,000 are still in the realm of spiritual beasts, and 8,650 have become spiritual monsters. Many of them are elites who are about to break through to become demonic beasts. There are also people who don't want to leave the valley recently. There are 3,000 spiritual monsters and 300 ordinary demonic beasts. They all want to stay under your Majesty's command because they saw your Majesty's magical power." According to Chi-Hua, it seemed that there were more than 16,000 demons in the valley, including those who had just been born with spirituality. When Di Shirtian first came to the valley and named it 10,000 demons, he had unknowingly achieved his vision. Di Shirtian nodded approvingly. At this time, Yuan Tian also took a step forward and said, "Your Majesty, this subordinate has followed your instructions and led the tribe to brew spiritual wine day and night. Every 3 months, we can get a pool of spiritual wine, and each pool can get about 10,000 gourds of spiritual wine." Now in the wine cellar, there are 150,000 gourds stored. They can be used by your Majesty at any time. In 5 years, they could get about 200,000 gourds. However, during this period, they needed to provide the people in the valley with spiritual wine every day to speed up their cultivation speed. In addition, the Black Ape King and the others who moved in later, the consumption greatly increased. In 5 years, a total of 50,000 to 60,000 gourds of spiritual wine were consumed, which made the overall strength of the valley soar greatly. "Good." Di Shirtian was not stingy with his praise and nodded. "Yuan Tian, your wine is related to the improvement of the strength of the people in the valley. Your contribution is immeasurable. I have noted it down." Indeed, Yuan Tian was definitely the one who contributed the most to the success of the Myriad Demon Valley. If it were not for the support of his spiritual wine, it would be impossible for the valley to get so many demons in such a short time. Reward, he must be rewarded, and it must be a big reward. Then Baiwe, Inkong, and Bai Susu also told him their own things one by one. Among them, Bai Susu led the tribe to guard the herb garden and protect the spiritual herbs planted in it. The credit was also not small. Every single one of them handled their own duties without messing up in the slightest. It was quite rare. And in their narration, Sakura also had a complete impression of the situation in the valley bit by bit in his mind. This had an extraordinary significance for the integration that was to be done next. Meritorious deeds should be rewarded, and wrongdoings should be punished. You are all the first to follow me, and I will not treat you unfairly. Chihua stepped forward. Deshirtian was full of dignity and said with a solemn expression, "If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.